Chapter 526. A few days after injecting the drug, Luo Nan had already said goodbye to sleep. He had a sleepless night, and the only person in the family who could sleep at night without any worries was probably that kid, Mo Peng. However, the morning of the second day felt just like last night's conversation. It passed by like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. Before this, Luo Nan had even run out to do his morning exercises according to his living habits. He had been separated from Rui Wen for an entire night in passing. When he returned home with a body full of sweat, he simply thought that time had turned back to several days ago. Luo Nan had a general idea of the reason. His uncle had pondered for over an hour in the study last night, and the information he told his aunt went through a layer of filtering. His uncle didn't conceal the matter of Luo Nan joining the Xia City branch. It was just that from his mouth, the Xia City branch had become a social society, something similar to a brotherhood. Through this analogy, the inner world, which was extremely complex, had become a relatively closed social circle. The corresponding activities were explained as research into superpowers. Could this sort of explanation be described as, the older the ginger, the spicier? Luo Nan sat in front of the dining table, chewing on a piece of beef in his mouth, but it was tasteless. He felt that it was a bit absurd. The enormous flow of information had been passed around like this, layer by layer, and finally turned into a completely warped answer. Every time the flow was intercepted, the corresponding pressure had to be shouldered by the interceptor. Luo Nan was aware of this, his uncle was aware of this, but would his aunt really believe it? There was also Mo Ya. It must be said that Mo Ya was the one who understood Luo Nan's ins and outs the most out of everyone in the family. She should be the one with the greatest doubts. But ever since they formed a bit of tacit understanding in the administrative center, it seemed that she really wasn't interested at all. How was that possible? Luo Nan stuffed the food into his stomach with great difficulty, but he didn't want to stay at home for long. He hurriedly washed his face and rinsed his mouth before saying, "I'm going to school." "I'm going too." In the end, Mo Peng didn't get to wait for the suspension notice. His spirit, energy, and soul were completely dispirited. He could only wave his hand weakly and follow Luo Nan outside. The two had just reached the entrance when Luo Shuqing suddenly spoke from behind, "It's getting late. I'll send you off." "There's no need. It's just a matter of 2 steps. Forget it. Pretend I didn't say anything." Mo Peng rolled his eyes and left without looking back. The fact that his own son couldn't compare to his nephew was a sad thing that he had already realized long ago when he was wearing diapers. But Luo Nan cried bitterly in his mind. He could feel his uncle and Mo Ya's gazes cast over at him at this time. Not being able to travel with Rui Wen, Chinikuan, and the others was a small matter. What was important was how to deal with his aunt. He couldn't reject her. He might have been able to in the past, but he definitely couldn't during this sensitive period. He could only turn around and obediently reply, "Oh, thank you, Auntie." Luo Nan responded excessively courteously. Luo Nan immediately opened up his friend group of staff officers. He used his telepathic thoughts to guide and leave a message asking for help, emergency. Perhaps it was because the atmosphere from last night had not dissipated, and it was just in time for dinner. The group was very lively. Zhang Yingying exclaimed, "Is your house in hell mode? You've passed one level after another. In this kind of environment, you should be thankful that you haven't been raised into a weakling." Cat Eyes of the security team flew over and said, "I think he's quite popular." Bamboo Pole followed closely behind. "You've tried it." "Hey, why is there another person in the group?" Crow. "This is great. We have a fox, a crow, an octopus, and a cat. It's enough to make a fairy tale." Octopus sent a yawning emoji. "Newcomer, hurry up and send me a red packet to refresh yourself." "Oh right, who's Crow?" "Huh, newcomer. Isn't this Boss Luo's friend group?" "Boss Luo, give me an introduction." The answer in Luo Nan's mind had just become clear when Crag burst probingly asked, "Rui Wen?" "Huh? Cat Eyes sent a photo of her and Rui Wen at this time. The two's faces were pressed together. One was smiling brilliantly, while the other was looking at the camera with indifference. Under the illumination of the lights in the room, one was charming and tender, while the other had a personality. I'm a bit free tonight, so I pulled the little girl up. Look, she'll be really pretty if she tidies up her hair. Cool androgynous styles are the most popular right now. I'll take Rui Wen to go shopping when I have nothing else to do. Yingying, do you want to go? Welcome newcomer. I want to go. I want to go. Zhang Yingying sprinkled flowers and applauded, bringing forth a wave. The atmosphere was very enthusiastic. Perhaps it was because of Cat Eye's urging, but Rui Wen actually used the name Crow to send an emoji. It was the first emoji in the emoji pack, smile. Compared to the indifference in the photo, there was an even greater contrast in cuteness. Bamboo Pole, this nouveau riche who often fished for extra money, immediately sprinkled a rain of money. The more beautiful women the better. The deeper the relationship, the better. Crow, I can't ask you out. Octopus was shocked. At least 3 years, hey. Cat Eyes gave him a middle finger. If you can live for 3 seconds, I'll give it to you. In reality, what Cat Eyes said was 100% the truth. But the problem was that they had gone off topic, okay? Luo Nan didn't have time to complain. He had already followed his aunt out and into the car. They entered an independent, sealed space. He saw that the other person didn't have any intention of taking the initiative to speak. He felt that it would be more refreshing to take the initiative to speak. Aunt, yesterday. Uncle brought it up with you. Mrs. Luo Shuqing started the car and set it to autopilot. She responded indifferently, our days can still go on. Clearly, Luo Nan's pronunciation was unclear. He had mixed up the words, brought up, and left. However, his aunt's nitpicking was just an excuse. There would certainly be an even more amazing one in the back. Luo Nan just felt his hair stand on end. The group gradually calmed down from its previous clamor. Through Luo Nan's shared perspective, everyone's attention was focused. But a call came in at this time, and it was a direct request for a video call. Luo Nan swept a glance. It was Dwei Wu. He raised his head, and Luo Shuqing indicated that it was fine for him to just do his own thing. The video call connected, and nothing else could be seen. All he saw was the child's face that was a bit distorted from excitement. Then there was a piercing scream, Brother Nan. Brother Nan. Brother Nan. You're 2F** King Awesome. Huh. He succeeded. Godfather succeeded. Look at this. Look at this. The little fellow gently pinched a floating water droplet over as if he was presenting a treasure. He crushed it with force and even crushed it a few times. But when his fingers left the water droplet for a second or two, the water droplet condensed once more. It grew from small to large, and it was on the verge of falling. While Di Weiwu was reporting the good news, Papercut, who had been invisible all this time, set off fireworks in his friend group. He even learned from the tycoon bamboo pole and sprinkled a rain of red packets of money. He succeeded. He wasted 5 years and succeeded in a single day. Boss Luo is a genius. Not many people knew about Worker Zhai's matter. Most of the people in the group were stupefied. What's going on? Luo Nan didn't pay attention to how Papercut would explain this to the others. He was happy for Worker Zhai. Worker Zhai's face just so happened to appear on the virtual screen at this time. This man was over 40 years old, and his eyes seemed to be slightly red. He was clearly emotional. But even so, he was still more perceptive than Di Weiwu. He knew that this wasn't the time to chat when he saw Luo Nan's background. He grinned and said, Weiwu, sorry to disturb you. I'll just say one more word. It's done. Plus, I've successfully activated the 3rd level of the Hexier. I've crossed 2 checkpoints in 1 step. We'll talk about the specifics later. The first 3 of the 6 communication levels of the hexayear were the radio, the television, and the computer. The first 2 levels passively received information, but the 3rd level evolved to the human-computer interaction stage. According to the standards of Xia City, Worker Zhai was a qualified awakened. In other words, not only did Worker Zhai successfully create a semi-permanent condensation ring, but he also borrowed this miraculous structure to increase the level of his soul strength and cross the checkpoint of awakening. For an ability user, this was absolutely a major event that would allow a carp to leap through the Dragon's Gate. Even though Luo Nan was currently plagued with troubles, he was still happy for Worker Zhai from the bottom of his heart. This is a great thing. Congratulations. Worker Zhai did his best to maintain a smile and a steady voice, but in the end, he just hoarsely said, "Thank you, Nanster." The call ended, but the clamor in the group of friends continued. According to what the group of people said, ability users like Worker Zhai, who had been stuck at the checkpoint of awakening for many years, would have their chances of awakening gradually decrease as they grew older. This was a huge problem that caused the non-awakened, who made up 90% of the group, to feel anxious and even despair. The success this time had evidence to observe. There were rules to follow. Writing a major thesis based on this was the bare minimum. It was even possible to establish a project. Luo Nan couldn't care less about the significance of this matter no matter how much the group raised it. He looked at his aunt in the first instance, thinking about how to combine his uncle's words and come up with a proper explanation. But Mrs. Luo Shuqing had a very calm appearance. "Is it Worker Zhai?" "Yeah. Today's matter, cough. It's a difficult problem that has troubled him for a long time. I had a flash of inspiration and came up with an idea. Then he experimented for a while and succeeded. That's why he came looking for me to report the good news." Luo Shuqing laughed but didn't say anything. She shifted her gaze forward, looking at the high-speed magnetic track that continued to extend out. This was bad. Mrs. Luo Shuqing was a senior HR employee who didn't show her emotions on her face in society. Every year, who knew how many elites brimming with confidence would sigh in the face of the past she guarded? But she was still very straightforward in front of her family. She said one thing as one and 2 things as 2. Once she was silent, it meant that she had something very heavy on her mind. This wouldn't do. Luo Nan's head hurt. No matter how hard he steeled his resolve to kill and intimidate, it was to the outside world. The change in the atmosphere of a family couldn't be stopped by the destruction of the human body. He tried to communicate. "Aunt." Before he could finish speaking, he saw Mrs. Luo Shuqing's elbows press forward. Her body leaned forward, and her chin pressed against the back of her hand. Her entire body just lay on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead at the road. At this moment, she was no longer a solemn elder, nor was she a dignified executive. Instead, it was as if she had returned to 20 years ago, the age of youth. Chapter 527. Luo Shuqing's expression of indescribable emotions caused the atmosphere in the car to become increasingly strange. Luo Nan didn't dare to disturb her, but his keen senses discovered that the moisture on his aunt's cheeks had increased a bit. Was she crying? The car drove on the low-altitude traffic zone. The morning traffic surged and shuttled back and forth. No one paid attention to the feeling of being in this ordinary family car. Luo Nan instinctively wanted to seek help from the staff officer team, but he saw his aunt's figure lying on the steering wheel. Her emotions were so desolate and low. Was this something that an outsider's staff officer could solve? He instinctively felt that something was wrong. His friends noticed the situation in the car at this time and the clamor died down. But strangely, no one gave him any ideas. The silence on both sides made Luo Nan suddenly realize something. Yes. How could an outsider deal with a family's emotional problems? He subconsciously cut off the shared view and closed the group chat. But this didn't help his ability to solve problems. His mind was still a field of blankness. His aunt suddenly called out his name at this time. Her pronunciation carried a bit of a nasal sound. Your birthday is coming soon, right? Ah, me? It's June. I'm talking about your father. Luo Nan was suddenly stupefied on the spot. His aunt knew of his serious dissatisfaction with that person these past few years. She rarely took the initiative to mention it, so Luo Nan had already lost the relevant reaction. Should he be angry? Should he be furious? There was an instant when Luo Nan's heart was blocked by some sort of negative emotions. But the amount that truly surged to his head was much smaller than he imagined. Luo Nan had a general idea of what was going on. He discovered that the deeper he cultivated, the more frequently he could see traces of that fellow. Even if he missed and admired his mother's achievements, it was impossible to overlook the faintly discernible shadow under the brilliant radiance. Plus, there was still the external neuron. Luo Nan suddenly discovered that a considerable portion of the negative emotions that soared in his mind were directed at him. He felt like a child. His heart was clearly filled with resentment. He felt that all of his righteousness and grievances were occupied by an adult. But when an adult sent him a candy, he couldn't help but chew and eat it. There was even a hint of delight in his heart. Where's your backbone? Where's your righteousness? You were so angry for so long. Was it just a hypocritical gesture for a candy? Duh. Luo Nan used his fist to heavily pound his thigh, but he forgot that the strength of his hand was no longer the same as before. The sound of his fist wasn't loud, but he felt as if his bones had gone limp from the shock. Looking at him like this, Luo Shuqing actually laughed. Her voice was still nasal, but there was a kind of pleasure of revenge. She finally turned her head. The rims of her eyes were slightly red, but her smile was pure and distant. It was probably because of her gaze. She was clearly looking at Luo Nan, but it was as if she was looking at an old friend who had traveled far beyond the heavens. She didn't care what Luo Nan's mood was like. She minded her own business and continued to speak. It was probably this type of weather. Yes, it was snowing that day. The three of you have already returned to the city and are living in Blue Bay community. At that time, he was already in trouble. Luo Nan really wanted to loudly say, "Don't talk about that fellow's trivial matters." But there was an incorporeal power that sealed his mouth. He was actually able to analyze the components within. There was the guilt he felt towards his aunt, and there was also some sort of impulse from the bottom of his heart. Therefore, he only opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Only the occasional sound of a car horn could be heard within the soundproof interior of the car. Aside from this, there was only Luo Shuqing's flowing voice. "He came to my house that day to discuss your grandfather's case. Then I sent him back." Ha! At that time, it really was a gloomy and miserable fog. We didn't talk. I just laid on the steering wheel. I don't even know what I was thinking. He was just like you. He sat in the front passenger seat. He was lost in thought until someone called him. It was a young man. Of course, he was much older than the child just now. His surname seemed to be Luo as well. I just remember that he had a sobbing tone as he shouted, "Success! Success! Luo Zhongheng, you deserter! You trash! You trash! You really are a fucking genius." It was rare for Luo Shuqing to be able to imitate the details of that person's words to perfection. This included the curse words and the choking of his sobs. Luo Nan looked over stupidly. He looked at his aunt's eyes that were filled with a misty red glow. He looked at the corner of her lips that were slightly trembling, but she still revealed a smile. "Your dad just smiled like that." I've completely forgotten what he said. But he just smiled. This is the first time I've seen him smile since he returned to the city. This is the first time. Tears finally overflowed. They overflowed her nose and dripped onto the steering wheel. Luo Shuqing didn't wipe them. She continued to lay on the steering wheel. She gazed at Luo Nan with the side of her face. She just extended her hand and lightly touched the back of her nephew's hand on his knee. What that person said was correct. What that child said just now was correct as well. You too, father and son, are both geniuses. One idea, one suggestion, one direction, and you can benefit others. You are undoubtedly geniuses. She didn't know how long it had been, but the smile never left the corner of her lips. She just expressed her emotions like this, without any concealment. I'm very happy. I'm very happy. Luo Shuqing didn't mention anything related to the society, ability users, or any other related matters during the entire journey. She only asked about worker Zhai. She asked about Di Weiwu. She asked about Rui Wen. She only wanted to know about the geniuses related to Luo Nan. As for the others, she knew that it was meaningless. The car passed through 4 city districts and arrived at Acumen College. Luo Nan got off the car and sent off his aunt. He still stood motionless in his original spot. He just felt a bit absent-minded, a bit misty, and a bit complicated. However, a certain place in the depths of his heart gradually stabilized. It wasn't until the flow of people in the school gradually thickened and the gazes of many people gathered on his body did Luo Nan realize that he had been in a daze for far too long. Qi Nikuan and the others should have brought Rui Wen over by now. Luo Nan opened up his friend group once more, but he saw that this group of people had a tacit understanding. They no longer mentioned anything related to his family. Right now, the topic of their discussion revolved around worker Zhai. They revolved around his breakthrough, the specific process and method of his successful awakening. Papercut was truly happy for worker Zhai. He was crazily promoting the marvels of the condensation ring. Of course, this included Luo Nan's miraculous train of thought and pointers. Looking at Papercut's posture, it was as if he hated that he couldn't just say, Luo Nan shall rise as the descendant of a martial emperor. Luo Nan blushed a bit when he saw this, and the emotions in his heart faded a bit. He simply sent a blushing and embarrassed emoji. Papercut didn't care about Luo Nan's current mood. He just stuffed a large red packet over. Introducing you to old Zhai was the wisest decision I've made in all these years. I'll have him treat you later. Everyone, sit down and keep him company. Luo Nan subconsciously opened the red packet. He was shocked to see that there were actually 5 honor points inside. This wasn't something that could be converted with money. He was immediately shocked. This isn't appropriate. It's fine. I'm happy. Plus, exchanging 5 points for an awakening is too freaking profitable. Bamboo Pole sent 2 thumbs in praise. Brother Papercut is heroic. Boss Luo is a genius. One by one, the people below followed suit and lined up. Even Rui Wen was at the tail end of the line with A+8. It was unknown if she did it herself or if Cat Eyes helped her. Luo Nan simply asked from below, where are you now? Parking lot, exit A4. Shui Lei, who had been accompanying Gym Master Mao Dong for the past 2 days, and who was also in charge of protection, exploded out at this time. Shui Lei had a stupefied expression. What's going on? While Shui Lei laboriously flipped through the historical information under everyone's reminder, Zhang Yingying said to Luo Nan, look over here. Look over here. Your chance to win a new nickname is here. Luo Nan replied with a head-scratching question mark. It was rare for Zhang Yingying to formally send a long paragraph of text. The boss is very interested in your and worker Zhai's train of thought and method. He feels that this is a new direction in the application of the dripping sword. It will be helpful to those who have not awakened or have just awakened. It just so happens that the elementary training class is about to start. Luo Nan, hurry up and write the lesson plan. I'll let you go this year. Luo Nan only replied with an ellipsis. The others grew more and more excited. Congratulations. You can call him Teacher Luo in the future. Professor Luo is still more pretentious. The boss hasn't gone on stage yet. Do you want to practice in a small area first? We'll give you some face. Luo Nan sent a sweating emoji. No way. How many days has it been since I finished my basic training? Plus, it's just an idea. Worker Zhai is the one who came. Shouldn't Worker Zhai be the one to go? None of them can escape. Worker Zhai wants to participate in the exchange of experience. Hurry up and notify him, Papercut. No, just pull him into the group. It should be fine to use the Hexier. Of course it's fine. I'll go pull him in. Papercut went to invite Worker Zhai into the group. Luo Nan's thoughts grew firmer. Having Worker Zhai is enough. Why would I join in the fun? You guys know that right now, I'm in a terrible mess. I can't split myself up. Yingying, can you help me explain this to Her Majesty Empress Wu? Oh, that's true. Zhang Yingying looked at the members list of the group. Crow had only spoken a few times. Zhang Yingying felt that it was a bit too much. Just thinking about the troubles that Luo Nan was currently encountering was enough to make them feel like their scalps were going to explode. Then I'll tell the boss. Tell him. Tell him. Thank you so much. Luo Nan managed to get out with great difficulty, and he saw Rui Wen and the others at the exit of the underground parking lot. Let's go to Gear first. Rui Wen can stay there when I go to class in the future. Cat Eyes can accompany her. Well, if my family goes to the orphanage to check up on me, you know what to do. Rui Wen nodded slightly. Luo Nan had Rui Wen go to Gear for other reasons than for better arrangements. Before he could instruct Cat Eyes face to face, the Hexier rang with a sharp and ear-piercing alarm. An artificial voice also sounded at the same time, number 5357, according to the adjusted calculations of the Branch Finance Committee, the system has already deducted all of your resource expenses from last week. You have a total of 137 honor points. Your current honor points are minus 124 points. Due to the negative value of your honor points, the system has automatically adjusted to credit mode and is preparing to shut down relevant privileges. If you have a different opinion, please file a written complaint with the Finance Committee as soon as possible. The countdown for shutting down relevant privileges has begun. It was at this moment that the countdown on the virtual vision of the Hexier began. Chapter 528. A minute later, Luo Nan looked at the bill sent by the Finance Committee. He had already forgotten to walk. The bill listed in detail the status of all his honor points since December 3rd. Luo Nan's only income came from the large red packet that Papercut had given him a few minutes ago. Everything else was expenses. Only the expenses of the computing space existed in Luo Nan's memories. He had spent a total of 10 honor points. But the remaining 127 points, those inexplicable names. Appearance fees. Intelligence support. Network consumption. Lawyer fees. Accounting costs. What the hell is this? Luo Nan was a bit restless. It must be known that the society's honor points could be exchanged through official channels for 1,000,000 points per point. This was a debt of over 100 million. And it was a one-way exchange. He could only exchange points for money. He was not allowed to exchange money for points. In reality, it was impossible for anyone to exchange points for him. Honor points were the only currency in circulation on the society's resource trading platform. Aside from bartering, the rare resources on the platform could only be traded with this virtual currency. Luo Nan was a bit far away from these things. Right now, he just couldn't figure out what these expenses meant. Looking for He Yueyin and Secretary, he was definitely the right choice. Secretary, he was very surprised when she heard the news. She understood the situation before giving Luo Nan a more detailed report. The Finance Committee believes that you have consumed a large amount of the branch's internal resources starting from the night of the 8th. This includes, but is not limited to, the transfer of society members, the use of contacts, intelligence work, and so on. Following this, the corresponding resources must be coordinated in order to ensure the effectiveness of your family members' response plan. Many of these resources are exclusive to the society and even private individuals. So, if you want to carry out the plan, you must pay corresponding compensation. Of course, the compensation in the inner world, credits, and the like were meaningless. They were impossible to measure. The only thing that could be used to pay was the honor points that circulated within the society. In other words, if Luo Nan's uncle were to use the SCA's resources to continue an in-depth investigation of Luo Nan's current situation, the corresponding expenses would increase according to the Finance Committee's new calculation method. Right now, your authority in the society has been changed to be supported by the credit system. The society expects you to have 1,000 credits, but you need to repay a portion of the principal and interest every month. If you can't make ends meet, 1,000 credits will be deducted. That would be bad. So. You've offended Her Majesty Empress Wu. He Yuan's conclusion was concise and clear, going straight to the heart of the matter. Her Majesty Empress Wu is the person in charge of the Finance Committee. All accounts have to go through her signature for confirmation. She has the authority to adjust the calculation of the relevant accounts, as well as to make evaluations regarding certain privileges. Luo Nan was a bit stupefied. Yesterday he was helping to shelter her from the wind and rain. Why did he turn hostile today? Did you bump into her somewhere? How is that possible? I also. Hold on. Luo Nan suddenly thought of something. He raised his hand and sent a communication request to Zhang Yingying. Luo Nan didn't say much after the call connected. He directly sent over his bill and his opinion on how to deal with it. Do I count as having found the end? Zhang Yingying responded with a dumbfounded emoji, and then hurriedly replied, wait a moment, let me ask. She then left this side and went to confirm with Her Majesty Empress Wu. However, once she left, there was no reply. Luo Nan was helpless. He could only first settle Rui Wen down. It was already time for class, so he hurried to the classroom. The first class today was a major class. Luo Nan and Xue Lei just so happened to be together. When the two met, they were both frowning a bit. There was no need to talk about Luo Nan. Right now he was in trouble from head to toe, from inside to out. He could become a corpse on the streets at any time, and he could become a bloodbath at any time. He was without a doubt the #1 troublesome source of infection in Xia City. From Xue Lei's perspective, today was already the 10th. There were only 12 days until the winter solstice battle with Duan Hong at the Thunder Falcon Dojo. He still hadn't found a perfect plan up until now, and he couldn't just stand by and watch Luo Nan's troubles with folded arms. His head was swollen to the point of pain. The two of them didn't listen to what the teacher said in class. Blessings never come in pairs, but misfortunes never come alone. For some reason, the teacher who was giving the major class actually played a question and answer game in this sort of class, and it hit Xue Lei in one hit. Even if Xue Lei had the courage of 1,000 men, he could only stand up stupidly and awkwardly say, this student's intelligence is insufficient. Please, teacher, help me top up. Luo Nan let out a rare laugh, but then the Hexier's communication sound and the teacher's call for the student next to him rang out at the same time. Poor Luo Nan. Even if he knew the color of the underwear of every student in the classroom, the teacher's standard answer was futile. Plus, the Hexier's belated communication was still distracting him. He stood up unsteadily for 2 seconds, but his eyes could only stare at the ceiling. He released the most classic emergency answer of a grade 13 student from the year 2096, Teacher, I'm asking for a leave. My stomach hurts. Luo Nan scuttled out amidst the roaring laughter of nearly 500 students in the large classroom. In just a few steps, he treated the experience in the classroom as an unreal dream. He quickly walked down the stairs and contacted Qi Nikuan at the same time, arrange a car. We're going to Heavenly Herbarts. Which one? God knows which one. They say it's at the Sky Luck Tower. Qi Nikuan understood and asked, are we going now? Are we all going? Luo Nan looked at the electronic invitation that Zhang Yingying had sent back. His name was the only one written on it. He shook his head, you and me. Brother Gauda and Cat Eyes can accompany Rui Wen. In any case, there's no need for security over there. The northernmost administrative district of Xia City was the Sky Terrace district. The city was built against the mountains, and the terrain was uneven. The three tallest buildings in the city, the tallest, the most expensive, and the most pretentious building, the Sky Luck Tower, was located there. Luo Nan wanted to go to Heavenly Herb Arts, which was located in the Sky Luck Tower. It was the kind of place that people with less money could not enter just by looking at the door number. Luo Nan and Chinikuan arrived at the Sky Luck Tower 40 minutes later. They took the elevator to the 222nd floor. They exited the elevator. The south side of the long corridor was an entire row of high tensile glass walls. Although this floor only reached the chest area of the Sky Luck Tower as a whole, due to the terrain, the entire Xia city seemed to be within sight when one looked south. Of course, this didn't matter to Luo Nan. The icy cold rainwater covered the entire area of his senses. He didn't care about this scenery. But in terms of his senses, there really was an area in front of him that was hazy and unclear. Plus, he was constantly getting closer to it. Over here. Zhang Yingying was over a dozen meters away. She waved her hand in this direction, afraid that Luo Nan wouldn't be able to see her. Today, Zhang Yingying walked with a light and familiar style. She wore an orange-red wool coat, leather pants, and short boots. She even wore a black-brimmed hat that gave off a rather artistic feeling. She seemed bright and beautiful, and she seemed lively. She stood there radiating with splendor. Heads turned to look at her off the charts. But after Luo Nan raised his hand to signal, his entire attention was drawn to the long-haired woman who was leaning against the glass wall and reading a book with her head lowered. Compared to Zhang Yingying's thick and heavy colors, this woman only wore a simple pair of jeans paired with a white linen sweater that was a bit too loose. It was as if she was still living in autumn. The light from the outside was slightly dim. The outline of the silhouette, the hanging curtain of hair, the lightly held scroll, and all sorts of other elements converged together to form a nearly perfect composition. Luo Nan didn't want to decipher anything. He just couldn't help but think at this moment, this woman reads a book and doesn't appreciate the scenery. This is because the world within the book is much more vast and profound than the simple scenery. Cough, that's what I think too. Chinikuan hissed from the side, it really is Her Majesty Empress Wu. She really was. Though the name of the invitation was a baffling charity art exhibition, Zhang Yingying, who had sent the invitation, was following the decree of Her Majesty Empress Wu. Her Majesty Empress Wu was undoubtedly waiting for him here. With this boss here, security work and the like really didn't have any meaning. Boss, Nanster, and the others have arrived. Zhang Yingying was worried that Her Majesty Empress Wu would be engrossed in reading, so she reminded her. Her Majesty Empress Wu didn't put on an act. She simply closed the book and held the scroll in her hand. She nodded to Luo Nan in greeting and smiled. Perhaps it was because of her makeup, but this woman didn't seem to have the dignified bearing of an extraordinary. Instead, she seemed like a cultured and refined teacher, or perhaps an artist. Luo Nan silently said 137 in his mind to rid himself of this misconception. Even now, he didn't know why Her Majesty Empress Wu would send him an invitation. He didn't know how he had offended Her Majesty Empress Wu. Luckily, the tone of the woman in front of him carried a bit of the sharpness that should be there. You're not slow, and it's quite a coincidence. The hateful ceremony just ended. Let's just go in. There was no need to introduce themselves. The four followed the sparse stream of people and slowly walked into the Heavenly Herb Art Gallery. This was clearly a charity art exhibition, but the security at the entrance was quite strict. There was a professional security company guarding the door, and one had to rely on an electronic invitation to enter. Each invited person was only allowed to bring one attendant. Luo Nan saw this scene and subconsciously felt that the art exhibited in the gallery was certainly an extraordinary masterpiece of art. He held his breath and didn't use his mental senses. He wanted to use the most traditional method to seriously appreciate the art. But this thought was completely corroded by the strange colors, the twisted lines, the exotic structures, and the eye-piercing designs that assaulted his face in half a minute. Damn, why didn't she tell me that this was an avant-garde art exhibition? Luo Nan blinked his eyes hard to eliminate the intense stimulation brought by the light. Her Majesty Empress Wu's soft voice entered his ears. I heard that you're a decent artist. I just have a bit of experience in sketching. Luo Nan wanted to be modest, but he was faced with all sorts of designs and drawings laid out in all directions. He couldn't help but spit out a sentence. I don't understand these styles, and I can't appreciate them. It's fine if you don't understand. In today's society, people can't understand paintings. It's fine as long as the explanation is self-justifying. A successful expression, a successful operation. In the end, this is a world that depends on the results. Her Majesty Empress Wu's voice wasn't loud, but she didn't deliberately lower her voice. It was hard to avoid some people giving her sidelong glances. However, they walked leisurely, and they soon pulled apart the distance between them and the people who were forcefully appreciating the paintings. The skill lies outside the painting. When you understand the cause and effect of this art exhibition, perhaps you will have a new evaluation of the value of the works inside. Chapter 529. Cause and Effect. Luo Nan didn't understand what was going on, and he urgently wanted to know the answer. Her Majesty Empress Wu didn't have any intention of giving a lengthy explanation. It was time for the attendant to appear. Zhang Yingying was facing a certain painting, the reflection of the glass outside. She was fixing the position of her hat. She received an order from her boss, so she winked at Luo Nan and waved her hand. Right now, there are a total of 214 paintings and 67 other works on display in this art museum. Their creators include 15 city councillors, as well as over 40 councillors' relatives and good friends and the like. If I do some serious calculations, it probably covers a fifth of the seats on the city council. Is that so? Luo Nan was able to understand the meaning behind this. Zhang Yingying raised the brim of her hat and continued with a cadence in her voice. The organizers of the event believe that this will be a successful exhibition and charity auction. You definitely didn't see the attachment to the invitation. The starting price of every work is over 200,000. The highest can reach 2 million. People without a certain level of authority, credibility, and wealth can't even enter the door. The income from the art exhibition will all enter a specific foundation. It's a good-hearted foundation with operating expenses not exceeding 75%. The philanthropists who buy these works will pay such a large sum of money, but all they get in return is a dinner with the artists. Luo Nan couldn't help but roll his eyes. Just say it's a bribe. There's no need to beat around the bush. He wasn't the type of person who hated the world, but his childhood experiences didn't allow him to hold any positive expectations for the relationship between the government and the business. A light smack rang out. It was Her Majesty Empress Wu tapping his shoulder with a scroll. Luo Nan didn't understand. He looked at her in shock. Her Majesty Empress Wu smiled slightly. Don't be confused by Yingying's unprofessional way of speaking when you receive information. You should hear the results before making a judgment. Otherwise, it would be a waste of 2 points a day. Can you not bring up points? Luo Nan couldn't help but curse in his mind. Zhang Yingying directly voiced her protest. How am I unprofessional? Right now, he needs to know the answer. He doesn't need to chat about it. It's good to let him have a minute to truly think. Her Majesty Empress Wu gently combed her long hair. She looked extremely feminine, but her words were from one of the dirtiest corners of the world. This is a bribe. But more importantly, it is to probe the current stance of Xia City's bureaucracy. At the same time, there are also arrangements against the military. Just last night, the research and development project that the military and Bomer had cooperated for many years suddenly achieved a breakthrough. Once this outer space survival system was successful, it would effectively enhance the efficiency of the frontier development bases on the Moon, Mars, and Europa. The military could even directly dispatch Deep Blue Walkers to carry out individual expeditions, greatly increasing the efficiency of development. The progress of this project is 2 years ahead of schedule, which can save the aerospace army nearly 20 billion in research and development costs. By the way, your secretary's family should be able to make a small profit this time. Argument comes after the argument, everything serves the argument. Though Her Majesty Empress Wu did not speak bluntly, Luo Nan still had a vague answer. Her Majesty Empress Wu concluded, if you add in the turmoil in the inner world, people from all walks of life will come one after another, forming a direct pressure. Then, this operation can be said to be well organized, far better than the rubbish we're seeing now. It's the movement of those capitalists who have ideas about Rue Wen. Luo Nan completely understood what was going on. He also understood why Her Majesty Empress Wu had called him here. It was a substantial level of meaning. He subconsciously wanted to search the art gallery with his mental senses to see if he could catch the mastermind. But he soon came to a realization. He didn't recognize those people. Moreover, this was a comprehensive probing attack. Aside from the greedy people of the inner world, the other operations were all on the level of capital and politics. They were unseeable and untouchable. How could he touch them in a short time? The effect of psychology was enormous. Though Luo Nan had yet to truly make a move, he felt extreme disgust towards this baffling art exhibition. He walked through this seemingly elegant exhibition hall, but he felt as if he had stepped into a cesspool. Her Majesty Empress Wu's words revealed a needling edge at this time. In comparison, your way of doing things makes people quite speechless. I don't need to explain the specific analysis. You should be able to understand it yourself. Since your sketches are decent, why is your behavior in society like a child scribbling? You do whatever you want without a shred of logic. Luo Nan was stunned when he was suddenly reprimanded in front of his face. Zhang Yingying saw that he was a bit embarrassed and hurriedly said, "Boss, you have to look at the powers he faces. How many days has it been since he entered the circle? It's already pretty good for him to be able to counter every move in a muddle-headed situation. Talent is needed for planning, and conditions are even more important." Conditions? Her Majesty Empress Wu suddenly stood still, bringing the other three to a stop. Luo Nan felt Her Majesty Empress Wu's gaze focus on his face. It carried warmth, sharpness, and strength. Let's talk about conditions. Let's start with the conditions you currently enjoy. Was she going to talk about the cause and effect of -137? But contrary to Luo Nan's expectations, Her Majesty Empress Wu cut in from a more macroscopic angle. Society is nothing more than the distribution and production of resources. Based solely on efficiency as a standard, everyone's treatment should be different within this established social order. Children don't have the ability to work, but they receive the treatment of children. They can act willfully and willfully, but they must have a personal attachment. Most adults possess the ability to work. They don't need to attach themselves to anyone, but they must attach themselves to the rules of society and the order of production. A small number of specialists possess special status and dignity. This is because they can allow society to operate more efficiently. Naturally, society's resources are inclined towards them. But in actual situations, there is a limit to this inclination. Even first-rate scientists have times when they need to run projects. The more Zhang Yingying listened, the more she felt something was wrong. She finally came to a realization. Hold on. Hold on. Boss, this is clearly Luo Nan's grandfather's formatting theory. There were quite a few people researching formatting theory in the current Xia City branch. As a friend of Luo Nan's, Zhang Yingying had put some effort into this. At the very least, she knew about the classification of the format pyramid. That's right. I've been researching formatting theory in addition to reading Buddhist scriptures recently, as well as its expounder. If I were to throw Mr. Luo Yuandao back 2,000 years in the past, perhaps he would be able to reach the position of Sakyamuni. Her Majesty Empress Wu seemed to give a casual evaluation, but Luo Nan enjoyed it quite a bit. He decided to temporarily ignore the slight unhappiness from being reprimanded. However, Her Majesty Empress Wu's feelings weren't within the scope of her concern. This world's apex extraordinary continued her discussion. From the birth of this theory, there is indeed a type of person in this world that can obtain nearly limitless resources from the entire society. This person's most basic standard is to be able to guide the entire society, to achieve a complete transformation. Do you think that you have the qualifications to do so? Luo Nan didn't know what to say for a time. Her Majesty Empress Wu placed the scroll on his shoulder. Luo Nan didn't know the significance of this action, but Her Majesty Empress Wu's conclusion was very clear. I believe that you are a very special existence. You deserve special treatment. But from a certain period of time, the resources poured into you by the Xia City branch have already blurred the boundaries that ought to be there. And you always give people pleasant surprises. You make people feel that you are worth the money. Unfortunately, upon closer examination, this might not be the actual output. Instead, it might be a new story in the capital market. Every day, there are stories of bubbles bursting in the world capital market, and even more bubbles blowing in. As a rational investor, we need to take a look right now and see if the project behind the story truly has the value to continue investing in. Her Majesty Empress Wu's words were straightforward. It was completely in the style of capital transactions. Frankly speaking, it was extremely incompatible with her elegant and free temperament. But Luo Nan didn't get too angry. She had already stood up for him against the extraordinary. What else could he do? What's more, it was born from formatting theory. Even if it was just a specious simulation, it was still something he could accept. There was only one point in his mind that was strange. Where had he heard these words before? The four of them stood in the aisle. The men couldn't be considered handsome, but the quality of the beauties was extremely high. They were quite eye-catching. Her Majesty Empress Wu didn't have the hobby of being admired like a work of art. She put away the scroll and continued forward. At the same time, she asked Luo Nan. What makes you special? Luo Nan didn't have a conclusion in his mind. He asked back, Your Majesty, what do you think? Her Majesty Empress Wu didn't beat around the bush. I believe that you know the direction of your own development, and you are working hard towards it. Even more fortunate is that this direction has extremely high prospects and potential for development. There really aren't many lucky people like you. The vast majority of people in the world, including Yingying, don't know their true direction. They need to hit a nail, suffer setbacks, and even take a turn on the edge of life and death in order to understand. But at that time, the state of their lives and minds won't allow them to change. Zhang Yingying did her best to be the one to liven up the atmosphere. She voiced her protest, Can you not use me as a negative example? Her Majesty Empress Wu ignored her and said, Special doesn't equal value. At least in a certain stage. You are one of the lucky few. But where is your greatest value? From the perspective of capital, you are the final result of your grandfather's theory. Before you, countless people have failed and died in order to verify this theory. Only you relied on a simple notebook. You relied on ability, willpower, and luck to survive in the end. Right now, there are quite a few people who want to see what happens next. They want to see whether or not a single copy of yours can ultimately become a successful example. Countless people will copy, imitate, and learn from you. But these people's gazes are extremely picky. Formatting theory isn't a rare project. It was severely exposed 20 years ago. The investors tried to industrialize it, but reality proved that this was a dead end. Then they found a spokesperson based on the reality of the situation. This spokesperson carried out a universal transformation of formatting theory, and that was Yan Hong and his experimental son. The birth of the archetype format represented a path for people to walk. But this path has been blocked for you. Luo Nan opened his mouth to respond, I never thought about walking this path. Your ambition is commendable. But what kind of path do you want to walk? From the perspective of an investor, a project that cannot be industrialized and cannot realize profits is worthless. From the perspective of a scholar, a theory that cannot obtain approval is a tragedy. Have you really thought about how you should walk your path from now on? Chapter 530. Zhang Yingying felt that today's boss was a bit too talkative, and he was too inhumane. She couldn't help but tug at the corner of her clothes. Boss, you didn't pull him over to talk so much just to give him a blow, right? It's just a bit of the investor's grumbling. You can understand it as taking it out on him. Her Majesty Empress Wu tapped her palm with a scroll. She didn't hide her attitude at all. You haven't seen those nerds in the lab. I said, I can take this out to make some money first. But they said, this isn't my direction. Don't disturb my research. Who do you think I'm talking about? It's that bastard Ouyang Chen. Luo Nan believed that this was one of the most elegant expressions for bastard. However, the aftermath of the battle between the two extraordinaries made the listener feel rather embarrassed. As for Luo Nan, he was under even more pressure as a reserve bastard. Zhang Yingying glared at Luo Nan, meaning, you owe me a beating. Then she turned to Her Majesty Empress Wu, replacing Luo Nan as a lackey. She blinked her starry eyes. Although a certain someone is young, he's not to that extent. He's still very motivated. Look, boss. He's so obedient. He's certainly very obedient. Of course, he's a bit stupid. He might not understand things that are too profound. If you have any requests, if you have any opinions, just say it. Just say it. She was beating drums, making hand gestures, and winking eyes. Luo Nan would be done for if he didn't keep up. From his perspective, Her Majesty Empress Wu was the apex figure of the world. It was not shameful to receive guidance and education from her. Luo Nan took a deep breath and really did ask for guidance obediently. I hope Your Majesty can give me some pointers. That's fine. Her Majesty Empress Wu gave a smile that wasn't a smile. We're done talking about status and value. Let's talk about advantages. Where do you think your advantages lie? Relative to me. Luo Nan nearly choked to death from this precondition. Zhang Yingying and Qi Nikuan both had expressions that they couldn't bear to watch. However, Her Majesty Empress Wu's gaze was very serious. Luo Nan hesitated for a long time, but he could only grit his teeth and speak. I can't estimate the level of your abilities. However, I think it's possible that in terms of perspective. Her Majesty Empress Wu actually nodded in approval. Your pure observation ability is indeed unrivaled in the universe. Such a conclusion caused Luo Nan's mind to shake. This was the evaluation of an extraordinary. Not only that, Her Majesty Empress Wu praised him a step further. To be able to think of this, you aren't completely stupid. Standing on the framework of formatting theory, you should be able to see more things than anyone else on this planet, including extraordinaries. There is no one who doesn't want to obtain these abilities. Qi Nikuan and Zhang Yingying looked at each other. However, Her Majesty Empress Wu changed the topic. But with your current theoretical foundation, if you were to explain those phenomena and the true meaning behind them, and impart cultivation methods, it would definitely be a disaster. After all, you're just a result, not a process. If you were to promote your experience now, any investor would go bankrupt. In the end, formatting theory is still a laboratory product. It revealed some truths and destroyed the classical paradigm, but it did not build a new system from the ruins. You don't even know if such a system exists in the universe. Luo Nan felt that the meaning at the end of Her Majesty Empress Wu's words was a bit vague. It was a bit hard to understand. But before he could analyze it in depth, Her Majesty Empress Wu had already cut into the plane of reality. In terms of practical application, people nowadays don't need anything particularly essential. Even if they were given it, they wouldn't be able to touch it. Actually, you just need to describe a portion of the scene you see. For cultivators, for researchers, and for the social system of this planet, there is considerable value in providing a true perspective. When the vast majority of people in this world are blind, a guide dog is a priceless treasure. Pfft! Zhang Yingying couldn't help but spit out a laugh. She managed to control the latter half of her laughter with great difficulty, but her pretty face was strangely stifled. Qi Nikuan substituted himself in from a different angle. He lowered his head to look at his own hands. He didn't feel like he was blind at all. Luo Nan was a bit embarrassed at first, but he suddenly felt that he seemed to have heard similar words somewhere before. Of course, it wasn't in this style. He combed through the information in his mind and subconsciously said, poor deities know how to transform. Virtue matches the heavens. You still want to match the heavens with virtue? You can't do it right now. Your train of thought is far from being systematic. There is merit, but it's enough to cover the costs and expenses. Luo Nan understood. He really did understand. Isn't it just asking me to open a class? You old man actually went around in such a big circle. But he was convinced from the bottom of his heart, I understand what you mean. I'll go back and discuss it with worker Zhai and prepare a lesson plan. It's fine to limit it to the angle of the dripping sword. If you expand it too much, you'll directly bring them into a pit. Then I'll prepare a lesson plan and ask you to check it out. Having said this, Luo Nan couldn't help but ask, can I increase the value of my investment by opening a class? You're thinking too much. If you want to rely on education to make money, then your heart isn't black. Your ass is crooked. But education is indeed the foundation of many industries. As an investor, I have to offset the risks. I can accept losing money here and earning money there. Speaking of which, how's your history? Luo Nan couldn't keep up with the sudden jump. He could only speak the truth. Yes, it's very average. You should have some common sense. There was a very famous fellow in ancient times called Xiang Yu. When he was young, he had a very famous saying about education. It was something like, 10,000 enemies. Luo Nan laughed awkwardly. I know this illusion, but the specific content, books are enough to record names. The sword is not enough to learn. 10,000 enemies is enough to learn. Her Majesty Empress Wu recited slowly, acting as if no one else was present. Luo Nan didn't understand. Luckily, Her Majesty Empress Wu explained, the times are very different now. The sword isn't necessarily only a single enemy. Take that fellow Jin Tong for example. It's nothing for him to kill tens of thousands of people. But in essence, he is still a single enemy. A true 10,000 enemies is a system of knowledge grasped by people in the process of social development. Politics, military strategy, science and technology. On this foundation, slaughtering millions of people doesn't count for anything. Even the entire planet will be covered by this system. If you want to use formatting theory to cultivate 10,000 enemies, then you'll be on Jin Tong's level at best. But I believe that with the framework of formatting theory, you can completely become a single enemy. There isn't a single true result in this world right now, but I believe that formatting theory possesses the potential and value. And this is precisely the reason why I agreed to invest and continue to invest. In order to curry favor with investors, you should at least put on a show first. Luo Nan subconsciously glanced at Zhang Yingying. Zhang Yingying grinned and made a face. Luo Nan couldn't help but ridicule in his mind, this type of investor seemed very terrifying. Her Majesty Empress Wu continued to speak, the art of war says, soldiers. Through 5 things. Study through schemes, and search for emotions. The first is the Tao. The second is the heaven. The third is the earth. The fourth is the general. The fifth is the law. If we look into it in detail, it's nothing more than one's own resources, the external environment, the calculation of intelligence, and laws and regulations. For you, laws and regulations are fixed and unchanging. If you want to verify their value, you will need to see how you use other factors. There's no harm in spreading the plate a bit larger. That way, you won't have the regret of killing a chicken with a butcher's knife. This is a painting, a thesis, and also a research report. I hope you can sell it for a good price. Luo Nan was a bit stupefied at first, but he understood the meaning of these words 2 seconds later. This was the true guidance of Her Majesty Empress Wu. There were more and more people in the art museum right now. It looked like everyone was doing their utmost to appreciate the exhibits within the museum. They were racking their brains to find their value. However, everyone knew that the most valuable part was the radio waves that traveled inside and outside the art museum. Compared to the mainstream, Luo Nan's group of 4 was moving slowly, but their speed was still a bit faster. They had already reached the innermost part of the art museum, and they began their return journey along the winding corridor. Her Majesty Empress Wu was the first to turn around. She tapped Luo Nan's shoulder with her scroll. "You're able to listen to my nagging, and you're able to listen. You have a future, kid." Luo Nan looked at this young literary woman who seemed to be in her 20s. She spoke in such an old-fashioned manner, and Luo Nan felt very subtle. "If you think I'm a moldable talent, then add back my honor points." Her Majesty Empress Wu seemed to have seen through Luo Nan's thoughts. "If your honor points are deducted, then they're deducted. There's no way to add them back. In any case, you still have a certain amount of credit. I'll just sign the bill for you. However, I can make up for it in other aspects." Luo Nan, Zhang Yingying, and Qi Nikun focused their gazes on her. They wanted to see what sort of treasure the Almighty Extraordinary would bring out. Her Majesty Empress Wu just gripped her scroll. She walked forward as if she were taking a leisurely stroll. There's a rather special situation in today's art exhibition. The organizer and the person involved are quite sincere. They didn't simply set up a stall and wait for people to fork out money. Instead, they personally came to the venue. "Oh, it's those people." A small group of people were chatting in a corner of the art museum. Several brawny men in black suits were scattered around them, separating this area from the flow of people in the art museum. Her Majesty Empress Wu turned a blind eye to them. She led Luo Nan and the others over in a leisurely manner. A few men in black suits discovered them. They subconsciously wanted to extend their hands to stop them, but their bodies inexplicably went rigid. Even their facial expressions froze. There were 2 ability users who far surpassed ordinary people within the group of bodyguards. They wanted to make a move after discovering something strange, but the first thing they saw when they turned their heads was Her Majesty Empress Wu, who was holding a scroll and smiling. This time, even their thoughts froze. Her Majesty Empress Wu walked all the way to the side of the small group of people. Only now did the people in conversation feel that something was wrong. They all looked over in astonishment. Some people even subconsciously asked, "You are?" Her Majesty Empress Wu didn't engage in conversation with these people at all. She just said to Luo Nan, "Remember these faces. If you're not confident in your memory, you can take pictures. If you suffer a loss later and are in a bad mood, just choose one of them. Or you can slaughter them all. You won't go wrong." Her words caused everyone's expressions to change. But at this time, a few people among them clearly saw the faces of Her Majesty Empress Wu and Luo Nan. The blood drained from their faces. How could Luo Nan not know that these people here were the capital spokespersons who hunted for food in Xia City, as well as the bureaucrats who attempted to cooperate with them? He looked around, and the Hexier's database automatically matched them. A certain number of members of Congress, a certain number of upper echelons of companies, a certain number of famous brokers. Her Majesty Empress Wu said unhurriedly, "The vast majority of investors in the world should remember one thing. The largest investment should be placed on oneself. Though it's very likely to be inefficient, one shouldn't be a disgusting slug after the outer shell of capital and power is peeled away." Luo Nan faced these slugs, and his mood was unexpectedly calm. In the end, he just smiled and bowed. Chapter 531. The room was dusky. Only a moderate amount of light lit up near the desk to illuminate this corner. Luo Nan sat in front of the desk. The flexible e-ink screen placed on the desk reflected a glimmer of light, forming a virtual work area. It displayed the newest three-dimensional map of Xia City. Not only did it display the streets, buildings, and traffic layers on the surface, it even displayed the structure of a kilometer in depth, as well as the continental shelf structure of the surrounding sea region. This was the result of a combination of satellite images and the Society's survey intelligence. The map was zoomed in and floated within the work area. It was like a floating city amidst the clouds and multicolored light. It was small, but it was spectacular. The price of such a map was naturally exorbitant. It was sold for 1 honor point. However, Luo Nan soon pointed out 2 errors on the map. He relied on his own soul cloak ability to take back the honor points in the blink of an eye. He even made a small profit. But even so, his debt of honor points firmly crossed the -130 point threshold, and it was still accumulating further. Right now, there were over 100 flashing red dots marked on this extremely detailed three-dimensional map. Each red dot corresponded to the scene of Xia City covered by the soul cloak. They corresponded to specific life sketches in the living starry sky. They also corresponded to the lives of specific people in these complex scenes. Luo Nan's finger moved lightly, and Xia City began to rotate amidst the clouds and multicolored light. It looked like he could grab it with a single hand and then crush it to pieces. He couldn't crush Xia City, but he could slaughter these red dots and their corresponding heads at any time if he wanted to. Ever since he met with Her Majesty Empress Wu, the situation had inexplicably progressed smoothly. That person's guidance was accurate and ruthless. It allowed Luo Nan to experience the fierce methods of an extraordinary. It struck the vitals of some greedy capitalists and the Xia City government. If one were to compare the use of capital to the cultivation element, then perhaps it could be viewed as soul strength. They also needed a material body as a medium in order to exert a true influence on the real world. Otherwise, they would just be jumping numbers. At most, they would only be able to stir up waves in the hearts of people. Originally, these red dots represented members of Congress, officials, and capitalists. They were scattered throughout Xia City. They didn't need to take the lead themselves. They were able to use capital, power, and interpersonal relationships to construct an incorporeal net. They used this to drive the power of the real world. But after the fortunate meeting at the Museum of Art, a portion of the originally interwoven network in Xia City didn't suddenly collapse. It was like the frail nerves of the counselors and brokers. It was on the verge of collapse. It could collapse at any moment. In addition, Luo Nan's side could follow the clues to the melon. They continued to expand the scope of their search, illuminating even more structural areas of the net. They also illuminated the fat and clumsy bodies of the slugs that hid under the shadows of money and power. This made Luo Nan feel that spending 2 honor points per day for this information service was truly worth it. Moreover, Luo Nan didn't just rely on the strength of the society. Take the Wraith sign for example. That ugly yet powerful Darksider species was climbing within the living starry sky. Time and time again, it passed through the mental windows of the members, brokers, and capital representatives. It spat out incorporeal poison threads, leaving behind a special imprint. As time passed, the Wraith sign would appear in their subconscious and dreams from time to time, trying to figure out the pattern of the flow of their consciousness and doing a deeper infiltration. This spider was also weaving a web. It was weaving a poisonous web that could wear away at people's hearts. For the Wraith sign, invading the minds of higher life forms and corrupting their wills was an instinct it never grew tired of. It could also obtain nourishment from this. The more it did, the more energetic it became. It was just like how it treated Jack back then. Luo Nan could completely use this poisonous web to control the movements of these slugs, to knead their wills, and to seize their lives. Of course, compared to these simple and direct actions, the Wraith sign wasn't good at gathering information in detail. The Wraith sign could identify the nature of certain thoughts and emotions. It could understand their positive and negative tendencies. It could even capture some relatively clear fragments of consciousness. However, it was unable to understand the complex social relationships and meanings within. Luo Nan needed to do a step further in summarizing and sorting out these complex social factors. He worked in this manner. Even though Luo Nan possessed an excited brain that continuously received drug stimulation, possessed the living starry sky style of rough clairvoyance, possessed the gradually perfecting embryonic form of the overall planning technique, and had the Hexier's computing space as well as the intelligence system of the Xia City branch supporting him, it was absolutely not easy to do this. It was impossible to rely purely on his brain to sort things out, so he began to write. There were pure words, there were tables, and there were even sketches that he was more accustomed to. Luo Nan stayed up all night after returning home. He drew a total of over 400 sketches, all of which were reflections of his thoughts. Some of these sketches were extremely valuable. They even had the tendency of becoming psychic drawings. Some of them were a complete mess. They were like scribbles. Even Luo Nan himself didn't really understand them. Of course, this sort of thing couldn't be done on a physical notebook. Luo Nan began to draw in the flexible screen drawing software. He hadn't slept all night. Under the effects of hormones, his biological clock, which had gradually stabilized over the past month in such a vile environment, was actually able to hold on. It cautiously and conscientiously sent out a message, reminding him that it was time for his morning exercise. Luo Nan didn't move. With his current special situation, forcefully maintaining the tempo of his cultivation wasn't a good thing. At most, he would maintain the habit of running in the morning. He wouldn't let the changes appear too abrupt. There was still some time before the morning run. He stopped racking his brains over his work and began to tidy up. The several hundred sketches were of varying quality. The main body was still an analysis of the negotiations between capital and bureaucrats. They didn't touch too many elements of the inner world. However, this was the result of an entire night of hard work. When Dean Wanta imparted the planning technique to him, she encouraged him to use parallel thinking to process information. It didn't matter whether or not the brain could restore it to a temporal array. Mutual blending of information, bursting forth with inspiration, and fuzzy processing methods had always been the advantage of the biological brain. What's more, Her Majesty Empress Wu had already spoken very clearly. With her laws and regulations, formatting theory, as the core, Luo Nan could fully utilize all resources to detect and understand the external environment. He could calculate and compare, and achieve the framework of the enemy against 10,000. This was the correct path. Luo Nan already had a few outlines of inspiration. He didn't need it. For the time being, he couldn't do it like Jin Tong, who possessed absolute explosive and destructive power. However, he could use the special effects of the Wraith sign to do many things in advance. Therefore, Luo Nan viewed these sketches as a part of the overall design. They were the prelude to the enemy against 10,000. He treated them very seriously. He categorized and numbered them one by one. Only after sorting out the general logic did he sync them into the second layer of the drawing software. As the second layer of the software opened, a deep and cold radiance flipped over. It filled the entire screen of the flexible e-ink screen and engulfed the floating city within the work area. The sketches Luo Nan drew drifted down, and then their figures and shadows disappeared. Only the consciousness that was connected to the external neuron could grasp their existence. Ever since Luo Nan drew those few inexplicable psychic diagrams, the second layer of the drawing software had become a direct display of his attainments in formatting theory. Unbeknownst to him, a marvelous change had already occurred here. A pop-up window bearing an unknown text appeared. Luo Nan cleared it out of habit, and the interface of the void stars completely appeared. There was a virtual brain at its center. It was the newest display of the app icon and its UI in the interface of the external neuron. There was practically no difference between the two of them. In the first place, this was simply the result of the two softwares' mutual communication. Luo Nan didn't know when it happened. Luo Nan reckoned that it was when the virtual brain app appeared. Its UI inexplicably seeped into the second layer of the drawing software carried by the external neuron. It completely replaced the previous format pyramid and the upgraded self-format core star field map. But it made sense if one looked at it the other way around. When Luo Nan first saw the virtual brain, its interior was nothing more than a few sparse bright spots. There were dotted lines connecting them. It was like a life sketch that Luo Nan had casually plucked from his living starry sky. But right now, the starlight within the virtual brain region was resplendent and boundlessly dense. It was like a bright silver heart that floated beneath the vast and empty scene of the universe. Speaking of planets was a bit of a waste. It could be said that it was the complete model of a galaxy. Luo Nan was very familiar with the scene of such a star cluster. This was the core star field that was transformed from the form of the format pyramid after his cognitive upgrade some time ago. It represented his self-format. However, upon closer inspection, the originally dense clusters of starlight now had some slight adjustments to their layout. They appeared to be a bit sparse. There were some gaps up, down, left, and right. There seemed to be some rules that could be followed within the meandering starlight. As for what these rules were, or perhaps it was just a momentary misconception, Luo Nan didn't know for the time being. This was probably the result of the intersecting effects of the two star maps. In any case, the mutual influence and collusion between the two applications was already an established fact. Right now, Luo Nan opened the Virtual Brain app and opened the second layer of the drawing software. The interface and the core looked completely the same. Moreover, the several hundred sketches that Luo Nan had sprinkled inside, including the 1,000 drawings he had drawn and accumulated over the years, still existed. It was just that they were hidden deeper. The two applications shared the same UI interface. They exchanged information and data. Their cores also seemed to be merged into one. Luo Nan didn't know what this meant in the end. Was it originally like this? Was it something that would automatically appear when the opportunity arose? Or was it some sort of special intelligent logic that carried out a mystical integration? What sort of reasoning was this? What was the basis for this? Luo Nan pondered it over and over, but he could only start with the external neuron itself. He revolved around this mystical little thing and made some conjectures. First, the external neuron changed, revealing the Virtual Brain app after he received Dean Wan Ta's coordinating technique. Was this an orderly change in the brain that led to the activation of a new function, or was it the coordinating technique itself? Luo Nan needed to verify this further. Second, whether it was the external neuron or the coordinating technique, they both maintained a certain degree of compatibility with his current cultivation system. This was a good phenomenon, and it was worth further excavating. Third, the external neuron itself seemed to maintain some sort of connection with the resources of the outside world. The two unreadable satellites made Luo Nan quite concerned. But in the end, Luo Nan was submerged in a puzzle that had been troubling him from the very beginning. This little thing of mysterious origin seemed like a dynamo core, but it was 100 times more powerful than the dynamo core that he knew of. How in the world did his father get his hands on such a precious and rare object? And why did the dynamo core use such a secretive and tortuous method to return to his hands? Chapter 532. I didn't choose it last time. Luo Nan subconsciously wanted to close this panel, but he stopped just as his thoughts moved. Her Majesty Empress Wu said that he had to make full use of his own resources to create a great article. If he couldn't even figure out his own background, how could he make use of him? Moreover, he really needed power. Every bit of increase was good. With a thought, the pop-up window disappeared. Luo Nan's consciousness clicked on the default option on the transparent pop-up window. He was not given any time to regret or buffer. His head was slightly dizzy, and the external neuron in his brain was already emitting brilliant electric light that spread in all directions. Oh, did I cause a big commotion? Luo Nan subconsciously stretched his heartstrings taut. But luckily, the lightning spread out from his brain palace, transforming from tangible to intangible. The path it followed also expanded from the polar domain's spiritual plane, dispersing into his sealed system. It didn't have any intention of continuing to expand outwards. Luo Nan was able to roughly sense that this should be a type of scanning based on the changes in the fluctuations. As for what it was scanning, he really wasn't able to figure it out for the time being. Luo Nan pondered for a long time to no avail, and there were no obvious movements for the time being. Luo Nan simply let it be. Even the system's antivirus scan would take time, let alone this. He refocused his attention on the interlinking UI. Right now, be it the warship or the exoskeleton, they were both in states that could not be read. Luo Nan was tired of looking at them, so he naturally cast his attention to the virtual brain at the center. At the very least, the other side was densely intertwined with starlight and looked much better. Luo Nan probed with his consciousness. When he discovered that the two sides were visiting each other, he had experimented with it. He could enter the fundamental image of, "My heart's a prison," that was interwoven by the heavily chained crow. He was too lazy to walk through it again. He was only concerned about the vague pattern. Did it exist or not? How should it be reflected? It would have been better if he hadn't thought about it. However, in this star domain, his brain couldn't quite work. He felt that he was surrounded by stars, and they were constantly changing. There was no beginning, and there was no end. It was to the extent that he felt dizzy and confused. Sure enough, it's not good to go too deep. Isn't it like the saying, "I don't know the true face of Mount Lu, but only because I'm in this mountain"? He immediately withdrew his consciousness and observed from the perspective of a third party. He wasn't looking blindly, but he had some clues. These were the thousands of sketches in the drawing software. They weren't stored randomly, but in a specific area of the star field, occupying only a very small part of it. Luo Nan felt that if there really was some sort of law within this cluster of stars, then perhaps they were divided into some functional areas. What would happen if Luo Nan compared them to the functional areas of the brain? He projected the interactive interface into the work area, picked up the electronic pen, and tried to sketch it out. As soon as he started writing, he felt a little strange. It was as if he was playing a childish drawing game. He remembered that the very first diagram inside the virtual brain had been connected by lines, just like a life sketch. There was an outline that ran through everything. He tried to recall, and with a few strokes, he recreated the image and placed it in a corner of the work area. The original drawing was indeed very simple. If one were to forcibly describe it, it would be similar to a human figure, like a stickman drawn by a 3-year-old child, swinging its limbs and dancing. So far, there was no point in using it as a reference. After all, the outline of the core star area had nothing to do with the stickman. People would always inexplicably become engrossed in some repetitive and monotonous work. Luo Nan had probably jumped into a pit like this. Unwittingly, he compared the dots of stars and drew for over half an hour, all the way until he was dizzy and his vision blurred. It was truly evil. Luo Nan blinked his eyes forcefully. He even used the tip of the pen to scratch his head. He was quite conflicted for a time. Wasn't it too much for him to dig out a pattern from tens of thousands of stars? But that inexplicable feeling of excitement and bewilderment. It couldn't be that he was too idle, right? And at this time, the starry sky interface faintly lit up. Luo Nan blinked once more. There was a change. The UI interface of the virtual brain app, from a conventional point of view, referred to the mapping of two parts. One was the exoskeleton, and the other was the spaceship in outer space. They were like satellites, orbiting and flying around the virtual brain, but they were both in an unreadable state. But now, a new element had inexplicably appeared on the monotonous interface, which originally consisted of one main star and two satellites orbiting around it. Luo Nan waved his hand, wiping away the lines he had drawn before. He could now clearly see that a distorted silhouette had appeared on the outside of the exoskeleton satellite. It looked like a mass of dark gray mist at first glance. This meant that the scan hadn't been completed. No, the core structure within the mist was like some sort of abstract symbol, but it looked very familiar. The dozen or so lines twisted and twisted. They seemed to be meaningless, but it was very difficult to add or subtract a single stroke. Luo Nan looked at it for a long time. It was as if the entire world would be warped. This was the Wraith sign. To be precise, it was the mapping of the core characteristics of the human-faced arachnid. Luo Nan had discovered this warped structure back then, and he named his human-faced arachnid accordingly. This was the origin of the Wraith sign. Luo Nan scanned it once. What was the meaning of hanging up my believers? What was even stranger was that this mist symbol that symbolized the Wraith sign didn't directly revolve around the virtual brain. Instead, it hung on the outside of the exoskeleton, which looked very cool, but its volume didn't quite conform to reality. It was like a satellite of a satellite. Luo Nan felt this was strange, but soon, another image appeared on the outer edge of the Wraith sign. This image was a size smaller than the mist that the Wraith sign had projected. It was like the projection of a mountain, with dangerous cliffs and jagged teeth. It was quite sinister. This toy was even easier to distinguish. Blood Soul Temple. The starry sky interface grew richer and richer. 2 more images appeared soon after, appearing on the outskirts of the Blood Soul Temple. This time, they were clearer, and they were very familiar. One of them was a vicious ape with long arms and a rotten mouth. This was Yuan Air. The other was like a normal person, covered in shadows. This was Mo Luan. They were both puppets manufactured by the Blood Soul Temple. Oh, there was another one. It stood side by side with Yuan Air and Mo Luan. This time, it was a mass of dazzling electricity. It seemed to warp and transform under the pull of magnetism. It had no fixed form. With the previous elements as a guide, Luo Nan quickly confirmed that this mass of electricity should be the projection of Jin Tong's soul light seed. Now, all 3 puppets were alive. And they were a size smaller than the image of the Blood Soul Temple. They were like small satellites that revolved around the Blood Soul Temple. On the next level, the Blood Soul Temple revolved around the Wraith sign. The Wraith sign revolved around the exoskeleton. Finally, the exoskeleton revolved around the virtual brain. In this way, a strange celestial body system was formed with layers upon layers. And so, Luo Nan knew that this should be an abnormal tree diagram based on the relationship between father and son. Not to mention anything else, the Wraith sign system was displayed. But what sort of standard was this? Scanning the believers? The incorporeal fluctuations of the external neuron scan seemed to cut through cat eyes and the others, but not a trace of feedback came back. And why was it mounted as a sublayer of the exoskeleton? Could it be that it wanted him to equip it? The new 3 layers and 5 images appeared. The tragic thing was that they were still in an unreadable state, but there were differences. The Wraith sign was completely the same dark gray color as the flying ship and the exoskeleton. There was no movement whatsoever. But the Blood Soul Temple on its sublayer was already faintly colored. As for Yuan Air, Mo Luan, and Jin Tong's soul light seed on the next layer, they even flickered with a dim radiance. Luo Nan's consciousness touched them. Sure enough, they were beginning to analyze. There was some special feedback. And as time passed, the feedback became more and more obvious. Luo Nan was like a doctor giving auscultation. His consciousness flitted over and over above these images, feeling the subtle yet continuous changes. 10 minutes passed unwittingly. The images that appeared before Luo Nan's eyes already displayed a clearer new situation. Luo Nan finally understood some information. It was a relatively intuitive measurement and feeling. It was reduced to a ratio of data that he could understand. 10 minutes passed, and a very clear difference appeared in the progress of the analysis of these new elements. Jin Tong's soul light seed's analysis progress was approximately 1.2%. Mo Luan's analysis progress was 0.7%. As for Yuan Air, his progress value was just 0.1%. Luo Nan could accept this sort of speed if it continued, but he was afraid that it would be like the visualization diagram, where he was stuck at 9% for 2 months. But the problem was that the difference in progress between the three was a bit unreasonable. The fastest was Jin Tong's Soul Light Seed, followed by Mo Luan, and then by Yuan Air. Also, Luo Nan looked up a level. Unknowingly, the Blood Soul Temple's analysis progress had reached 0.4%. It was behind Mo Luan and ahead of Yuan Air. This was a bit messy. He needed to sort it out. Luo Nan moved his pen and rearranged the analysis progress of the 4 elements. Jin Tong 1.2%. Oh, now it was 1.3%. The other 3 were Mo Luan 0.7%, the Blood Soul Temple 0.4%, and Yuan Air 0.1%. The logic behind this was incomprehensible. In any case, it should be more difficult to analyze the higher-level elements. But looking at the ridiculous speed of Jin Tong's Soul Light Seed, wouldn't it be solved today? Next was the Blood Flame Orders system. It was easier to analyze. Was it more compatible? Or was it more shallow? Lastly was Yuan Air. This mutant clearly belonged to the Blood Soul Temple. It had been reduced to a puppet, but it was the most difficult to analyze. Could it be that the natives of the Cloud World were actually a level higher and more complex than the Blood Flame Order? But how could it be more complex than Jin Tong? Could it be that the Soul Light Seed was on a higher level than an extraordinary? Or could it be that the Soul Light Seed itself was too weak, so it was easier to deal with? Luo Nan pinched his eyebrows. He couldn't understand it for a time. The hexier vibrated slightly. It was a preset alarm, indicating that it was time for his morning run. It didn't matter if he ran or not, but he needed to take this opportunity to meet with Rui Wen. This was to avoid giving this pitiful girl the cold shoulder. There were also some specific matters that needed to be discussed and arranged with Qin Yikuan and the others. Luo Nan could only postpone dealing with this pile of problems. He hurriedly sorted out the doubts in his mind and put them on the tip of his pen to avoid forgetting them in the future. After hastily freshening up, he went downstairs. This was the time of year when the sun was the shortest. It was around 6:00, but it was still pitch black outside. The cold wind and freezing rain continued. Fortunately, this was a high-class residential area. There was a geothermal system in the courtyard, so no ice formed. However, it was a different story once he stepped out of the courtyard. Luo Nan didn't care about the situation he had single-handedly created. He had cultivated with Gym Master Xiu for several dozen days. His physical strength, explosiveness, balance, and coordination had all far exceeded that of an ordinary person. Even though he was walking on a layer of ice that could be used as an ice rink, his steps were still steady and light. Luo Nan paid attention to the virtual brain's interface from beginning to end. The analysis was still in progress. No matter which part was completed first, it should be helpful for him to further understand this peculiar app and this peculiar system. Chapter 533. This mountain of bones isn't that strong to begin with. However, Jin Tong fought a great battle up there. His electrode golden body. I just randomly came up with this name. But his ability to use his metallized body to guide powerful electromagnetic fields is quite decent. It's precisely because of the ionization and electrolysis effects of high-voltage electricity that a large amount of bones were crushed and then glued back together. It's tantamount to refining and remodeling. What was originally a pile of broken bones has gone up in strength, and most of them have fused together. They won't break so easily. I can take them back and use them as souvenirs. I can sell them for 1,000,000 or 800,000. A white-haired old man was laughing and laughing as he analyzed the ruins left behind after the great battle in the seas outside Xia City on the inner world's famous professional review program, Physiognomy. That's right. Half of the credit for creating this mountain of bones belongs to Jin Tong. But the structure of the mountain's terrain and laws should have nothing to do with him. He doesn't have this artistic sense. Plus, I feel that I should have seen a similar design a long time ago. That's right. That's right. It possesses the elements of the inner world. It has appeared before, but there hasn't been any trace of it for a long time. I've almost forgotten about it. Besides, you shouldn't be asking me this question. The gorgeous host's exaggerated expression of astonishment could be translated as, Madhurf *Kur. Did we find a scammer to cheat us out of our appearance fees? Of course, this was just a misconception caused by the host's lack of skill. In reality, when the program, Physiognomy, spent a lot of money to invite this white-haired old man, the veteran extraordinary Ghostai Che-E, to participate in the program, the inner world's viewership ratings reached a terrifying 77% during last night's primetime slot. This kind of data meant that, aside from a portion of people who wandered the wilderness and didn't have the ability to watch, practically 99% of the inner world's members were watching and studying this program. Luo Nan, who had been diligently preparing for his lessons last night, became the 1% who didn't fit in with the group. So much so that when he ran this morning, he had to make up for his lessons and watch the broadcast. This white-haired old man with a gloomy name was famous in the inner world for being a disrespectful old man. He once used his X-ray vision ability to wreak havoc for a time, making countless enemies. But he was still able to live safely and steadily until now. From this, one could see how powerful his abilities were. At this moment, Che-E was smiling so widely that his eyes had turned into slits. This was most likely because of the beautiful MC he was partnered with, only God knew what he saw in his eyes. Don't look at me with that kind of gaze. Don't you think it's more fun to dig deep into your body and mind than to look at this mountain of bones? You're taking advantage of me again. The beautiful MC cursed under her breath as she put on a curious expression. You mean, here, give me the controller. Yes, let's focus on it. The first-hand video from Zhang Ji's live stream was fast-forwarded under Che-Yi's control. When it reached the latter half, he pressed pause. Let's not talk about whether Zhang Ji's close-up was based on her looks. Don't you think that this young man, who originally had the same demeanor as me in the past, now looks a little out of character? The director took the opportunity to give a close-up so that all the ability users who were watching the show could clearly see Tian Bang, who was standing on top of White Bone Mountain at that time, with a focused and cold expression. Afterwards, the show was reduced to Che-Yi's old talk show. There was no longer any meaning in watching it. Luo Nan closed the video and let out a long breath of turbid air. The thought in his mind was, someone finally found out. Thanks to Major General Tian's godly assistance. Only now did the stimulation of the external sound waves to his auditory central nervous system arrive late. There was a process of deceleration and acceleration, so much so that Chinikuan's speech seemed particularly slow in the beginning. Then he suddenly accelerated in the middle, appearing to be several times faster than before. Even though there were all sorts of discomfort, Luo Nan was still able to obtain a gap to divert his attention. He was able to successfully receive external information that he should have naturally ignored. This was one of the applications of the organization technique. According to Dean Wanta's explanation, this was to actively exert influence on the external material waves. This caused the concurrent information flows to form a sequence of tasks that could be fully received and processed. In other words, it was to force the order of the external world to act according to the order and rules of the caster. This was to coordinate with the normal serial work of the human mind. From Luo Nan's perspective, the so-called influencing the material waves could be completely replaced with the mutual interference between the mental and material planes. But this didn't affect his understanding and practice of this principle. Right now, this was just a very basic application. At present, he could only process 2 audiovisual information sources at the same time at most, not to mention the obvious deformation caused by interfering with the information. He had to wait until he cultivated interference, sequencing, storage, release, processing, and execution to be completely natural, without the slightest trace of human interference. Only then could he be considered to have truly entered the next level. Luo Nan still had a great deal of practice to do in order to reach that step. So he didn't waste a bit of time. He absolutely wouldn't miss out on any occasions where he could use this technique. Perhaps it was the heaven's reward for his hard work, but the few sources of information he received this morning all told him good news. Chi Nikuan said, Senior Che has basically been making a fuss around White Bone Mountain. He has kept his mouth shut about Jin Tong's life and death, as well as the relevant battle deductions. And even though he's doing a program in the outer seas of Xia City, he's only messing around on the cruise ship. He has no intention of entering the country. His attitude has been relatively neutral so far. Is this considered good news? If he can maintain this attitude and leave immediately after the program ends, he can set an example and lead effect for many people. This is indeed good news. From the current situation, the restless situation caused by the 2016 billion in Xia City had actually been suppressed. Perhaps it was because hundreds of corpses had been strewn across number 9 and number 10 of Xia City in a single day and night. Perhaps it was because Jin Tong's life and death were unknown. Perhaps it was because the dark hand that colluded with the government, the military, and the merchant had been ruthlessly slapped. And Luo Nan wouldn't overlook the crucial role played by the Xia City branch in this matter. Half an hour ago, the Finance Committee controlled by Her Majesty Empress Wu had sent over the bill of honor points he had consumed yesterday. Compared to the impactful numbers in last week's general ledger, the daily accounts appeared dull and trivial. But the ledger that was pieced together bit by bit told him in the most direct way what kind of work the entire system of the Xia City branch had done in order to maintain this situation. And what kind of expenditure would it be if converted to the wealth of the secular world? But then again, Her Majesty Empress Wu didn't issue the bill to slap him in the face or make a fool of him. It wasn't to make him remember, reflect, or feel guilty. The practical significance lay in the fact that he had to take several dozen factors that appeared on the bill into consideration when formulating a battle plan. If he didn't do this, he would never be able to be considered comprehensive. He would always need others to wipe his ass from behind. It was absolutely not an easy task to take all the elements into consideration. Under normal circumstances, he needed an enormous staff. But the problem was that some extremely private personal elements could not be made public to the public. This was true even for Her Majesty Empress Wu and President Ouyang. Luo Nan, who was in the novice stage, needed to keep many more trump cards hidden. How to reconcile the relationship between thoroughness and secrecy was a problem that Luo Nan had to deal with. Her Majesty Empress Wu's requirement of being a match for 10,000 people corresponded with this. Luo Nan needed to frame the outline of a train of thought early on, and it couldn't be too small. He needed to have a clear goal, a broad layout, and even more, he needed to have a core method. When this backbone was determined, Her Majesty Empress Wu's bill could play an enormous role. He could use this to sort out clues, fill in loopholes, and stimulate inspiration. Right now, Luo Nan really did have an outline in his mind. He just needed to build a framework. He had already experienced success more than once. It was just that this time, the scope was much broader. Basically, as long as the soul cloak covered the area, as long as the wraith sign and the other believers were effective, it was all within his attack and defense range. Yes, there were also the resources of the Xia City branch. He would never forget Her Majesty Empress Wu's warning. He even drew inferences from one example. Not only did he need to see the resources, he also needed to see the opposite of the resources. His battlefield was far vaster than he originally estimated. It was far more complex. But what was very miraculous was that as Luo Nan gained a deeper understanding of the situation, he unexpectedly discovered that his operating space within it was constantly growing. It was like the network of red dots on the three-dimensional map of Xia City this morning. It was an angle that he had never thought of before, but it was unexpectedly easy to get his hands on. As the incorporeal net woven by the wraith sign continued to expand, the main thread of his actions erased the fog and color blocks at every moment, revealing his true appearance. This caused Luo Nan himself to be very shocked. Remember, this is just an illusion floating in my mind. Luo Nan reminded himself that all of these things couldn't be replaced by his fantasies and designs while running. He needed more preparation, more real experiments, and at the same time, he needed to be equipped with enough adaptability and hard power to make up for his flaws. Fortunately, he had already considered all of these factors in his earliest crude designs and had made certain arrangements. He saw the uncouth ghost eye make all sorts of conjectures about the Hill of Bones, and he felt that it was about time. But at this time, the virtual brain app became an X factor. It was still the same question. Would this sudden scan and analysis give him an additional trump card? Or would it make matters even more chaotic? After Luo Nan made his choice, this became the domain of the god of fate. Perhaps he could even pray to the moral integrity of a certain gene provider. Luo Nan stopped walking. An hour of running was nothing more than an insignificant warm-up, but his brain was operating at an ultra-high intensity, carrying out the rumbling operation of a deathly cross-country run. He even felt a bit dizzy when he came to a stop outside the community. This was a sign that he had consumed too much mental energy. It was just as Dean Wanta had said. The overall planning technique was never a technique that saved effort. It just allowed the brain to consume energy at the same time as it became more efficient. Qin Ikuan, who was running with him, gave him a thumbs up, turned around, and left. Luo Nan subconsciously paid attention to the virtual brain's interface, looking at the analysis progress of each new element. Then he saw, Jin Tong's soul light seed was still far ahead, and it simply looked like a bug had appeared. Analysis progress, 37%. The other 3 items added together were far from enough to make up for it. What was going on? Could it be that Jin Tong's specter was going to jump out after breakfast to take his life for revenge? Chapter 534. Today's breakfast time looked no different from the usual atmosphere. His uncle had just finished his duties as head chef. He sat in the main seat of the dining room and browsed the news. After his aunt finished arranging the bowls and chopsticks, she sternly berated the laziest Mo Peng to go downstairs. Mo Ye sat at the dining table early, but there was a diet meal placed in front of her. Though Mo Ye's figure was absolutely outstanding, who told the camera to make people look fat? Rumor has it that Ming Tang culture had made up its mind to let her have the golden edge of a high-quality idol outside of her identity as a rock singer. Mo Ye, who had yet to stabilize her footing, was still enduring silently for now. At least this was what Luo Nan believed. After the drowsy Mo Peng came down the stairs, his aunt turned to Luo Nan and said, "Are you free after school today?" "Oh, no." Luo Nan answered obediently. Actually, he already knew what his aunt wanted to say. According to the report from the director of Wanta, his aunt had already made some sort of mental preparation yesterday. She specifically made a phone call to make an appointment to go to the orphanage today. Naturally, she wanted to meet with Rui Wen. Sure enough, his aunt's next words were, "I've already been delayed for a day yesterday. I have to go to the orphanage today no matter what." According to what you said, a little girl like Rui Wen should be more sensitive mentally. Since we have to help her and take care of her, we can't be distant. You have good intentions. But you're thinking too much. Rui Wen was the most special person among the people Luo Nan knew. She was silent and reserved, and she naturally maintained a distance from others. She wasn't that serious. She was cold and aloof, but she was very obedient. Luo Nan felt that this little girl's way of thinking had already pulled apart from normal people during these 2 days of interaction. She was like a crow that mingled in the human world. She used a perspective that transcended the species to observe the world. No, perhaps she didn't even observe. She just drifted with the flow and lived. Luo Nan even thought that perhaps all of her willpower and pursuits had been completely extinguished the moment she stepped onto the road of adjudication and Jack died. Luo Nan obviously didn't wish for Rui Wen to become a walking corpse, but he didn't have any clues regarding this. Perhaps sending this little girl to a normal family life would cause her to change. But there was a very delicate problem. Could Luo Nan and his family provide this kind of life? It's okay. I went yesterday. After Amoya chopped up the lettuce with her dining knife, she felt a little better and finally had the mood to reply, Rue Wen, she's still very cute. That orphanage isn't bad either. Although the location isn't too good, the environment inside is really good. I heard that the entire design and decoration was done bit by director Wan and the children. It's simple and warm. It's really pleasing to the eye and has a lot of style. Then did you know that your sudden arrival caused chaos in the orphanage and also forced Rue Wen to cross a distance of 60 kilometers to flash back and act cute? Luo Nan buried his head in his kanji, cursing endlessly in his mind. Also, he actually thought that Rue Wen was very cute. Was this a sign that they were fated? In addition to praising Rue Wen and the environment of the orphanage, Amoya also had a good impression of Dean Wan Ta. That Dean Wan is also quite charming. He is a very dedicated and warm man. I heard that he used to be a traveler, but after he gained some enlightenment in the wilderness, he came back to do charity. He's a very down-to-earth person. Is that so? Sounds good. Although Mrs. Luo Shuqing always had a lot of opinions about Amoya's sloppiness, she also attached great importance to Amoya's insight and evaluation. She viewed them as an important reference. From this point of view, perhaps her aunt firmly believed that her eldest daughter was the one who truly inherited her innate bloodline? According to Amoya's words, she slightly revised her train of thought. How about we bring Rue Wen out for a meal today? The whole family will go and find a nearby restaurant. 2 people will go to the orphanage and bring Rue Wen out. I'm afraid that too many people will disturb the other children. Luo Nan felt admiration in his heart. Empress Dowager, you've really thought things through thoroughly. However, Mrs. Luo Shuqing proved that she had thought things through more than he imagined in the next moment. Oh right. I'm going to contact worker Zhai. Huh. The child he's sponsoring is called Diweiwu. He's with Rue Wen. There's no harm in inviting them over. With these children together, it's the same as having a small party. It's not too restrictive. Unfortunately, time is too tight. Otherwise, the effect would be better at home. Luo Nan blinked his eyes. You really are thinking too much. Mo Peng had just defeated the Sandman, so he came to his senses now. He appeared very surprised. You're saying that I'm going to this party? You're voluntarily withdrawing from this family group? Of course not. I'm saying that the low-altitude public transport is too slow. I won't be able to make it in time for dinner. Who's going to pick me up after school? Mo Haihang spoke calmly from the main seat. Let your mom make a detour. As compensation, I'll send Luo Nan off today. This kind of fairness is really shameful. Mo Peng was like a dog in grief and indignation, but he could only swallow the bone his parents threw at him. Luo Nan turned his gaze in slight astonishment. Mo Haihang lowered his head to look at the flashing news information on his desk once more. It was as if those words just now were the most simple and last-minute decision. 15 minutes later, Luo Nan sat in his uncle's family SUV. At the same time, he mentally prepared himself to face the interrogation once more. With this mentality, the gaze he cast at the driver's seat was actually quite bitter. You didn't do any proper work in class yesterday, did you? Looking up information and data wasn't a big deal. Finding false information wasn't a problem either. But that was all bought with points. Luo Nan really felt tired from dealing with such a scheming elder. But unexpectedly, his uncle continued the topic of Rue Wen on the road. He probed more into Rue Wen's temperament, mental state, and other elements. These were the things Luo Nan had been mulling over all this time. It was inevitable that he would say a few more words. He would discuss how to better integrate Rue Wen into the world of normal people. With that, he could not help but relax. He took the opportunity to use his half-baked strategic planning technique to simulate a parallel mission. Aside from the conversation, he could also look at the virtual brain app. Though Jean Tong didn't have any more vengeful souls after breakfast, its soul light seed's analysis progress was still at the forefront. It had already broken through the 60% threshold. There really was nothing that could stop it from advancing like a hurricane. Luo Nan felt a bit uneasy about this kind of bug-level analysis progress, but he was looking forward to it even more. Perhaps after this analysis was completed, he would be able to have a more intuitive understanding of the core of the virtual brain app. Looking at the interface of the app too much really made him irritated. His thoughts swept across the starry sky interface, and he would make new discoveries from time to time. He was certain that there were many functions hidden within this interactive interface. But correspondingly, there would be undecipherable characters. Even though they all belonged to the same hieroglyphic system, even though many of them looked familiar, Luo Nan was unable to decipher them no matter how hard he tried. Interaction was impossible, and the functions were limited. Luo Nan couldn't operate a single one of them. So it was said that characters were the natural moat. The obstruction of characters was the division between civilizations. Luo Nan couldn't help but think. Could it be that an inconceivable civilization truly existed behind the external neuron? Like aliens? Perhaps those undecipherable hieroglyphic characters were the carriers of an alien civilization? Similar thoughts had appeared more than once, but it was hard to form a conclusion. Luo Nan nearly believed that the road to school was going to pass amidst family conversations and meaningless fantasies. Then he suddenly heard a sentence, "Your search index is very high right now." Huh? Luo Nan's head went numb the instant his uncle's words entered his ears. He immediately raised the priority of the conversation mission to the highest level, but it was of no use. "What are you talking about?" Mo Haiheng switched topics with ease, and he struck right at the pit of Luo Nan's stomach. "Yesterday, I asked a friend at headquarters to do a rough understanding. I can't calculate the specific details, and we don't have that much authority. But if we just consider the search volume and relevance of information related to you from the inner world for the past 2 months, your ranking is quite high. I'm talking about excluding the local information of Xia City. We only calculate the feedback from other regions to Xia City, including Quantum Corporation and some other sensitive enterprises. Of all the SCA members in the Xia City branch, your search index is ranked second. You are second only to a powerful person nicknamed Her Majesty Empress Wu. But starting from last Saturday, the relevant data suddenly fell below the average line. A statistical difference has appeared. Is it because the urgent situation has attracted everyone's attention? Or is there some other factor interfering? Luo Nan was able to maintain a normal expression right now. This was the limit of what he could do. But what was the point? Mo Haiheng turned his gaze to meet Luo Nan's gaze. "I feel like you're doing quite well over there. Are you a celebrity member?" All right, Luo Nan admitted that his brain was muddled. His planning technique was directly broken. He went in a few circles before he had a rough idea of what was going on. It couldn't be said that the Xia City branch's intelligence work wasn't diligent. If his uncle only understood from the local area of Xia City and went to a separate organization to understand, there would certainly be no flaws. But this old man just bypassed all of this. He set his hand on the flow of information and made deductions. This really couldn't be covered up. The only way was to completely erase all the incoming and outgoing information. But how was that possible? Could Xia City be erased? What about the entire inner world? The inner world could be erased, but what about Quantum Corporation? Luo Nan's thoughts were too naive. Could he get a refund now? His uncle didn't have any intentions of continuing to pursue the matter. Instead, he was laughing. He was really laughing, without any other emotions mixed in. You people of the Luo family are all like this. It's like you can gather the gazes of others no matter where you go. From the wilderness to the city, you're all like this. It's just that Shuqing is a bit more low-key. Luo Nan mumbled, unable to speak. We should celebrate. You're able to continue the path of your grandfather and your parents. I've always admired them. I once wanted to participate, but in the end, I wasn't able to enter the door. At most, I was at the level of an archivist. So, there are times when I'm jealous. There will always be a chasm between normal people and abnormal people. I can only comfort myself by saying that it's the distance between a genius and a madman. Mo Haihang knocked on the control panel as he spoke. The virtual screen lit up, displaying a traditional 2D photo. Let me show you something new. The two madmen of your Luo family. Chapter 535. There were two people in the photo. Luo Nan was familiar with them, but he also felt that they were strangers. They both wore white lab coats as they stood on the cracked and warped red earth. The one on the left was an old man with gray hair. Although he was much healthier than he was now, Luo Yuandao could still see that this was his grandfather. There was also a young man who was a bit handsome. His appearance was vaguely similar to the old man. Luo Nan's facial outline could be found in the photo. This was undoubtedly Luo Nan's father, Luo Zhongheng. Both of them had unkempt beards. Their hair had probably not been taken care of for some time. It was messily scattered across their foreheads. Both of them had taut faces and looked serious. However, the scene they displayed was worthy of a round of laughter from the bystanders. The two of them had serious faces, but they posed like a comical comic book pose. Their bodies were half to the side, one to the left and one to the right. They swung their arms and kicked their legs. Their forelimbs were bent and their heads and necks were in an upright and unafraid pose. It was like the most tragic scene of Swan Lake. Luo Nan really did laugh. Perhaps this was the first time in many years that he had seen someone reveal a smile. It was really hard to imagine what kind of situation this was taken under. Look, it's a weird photo of your grandfather and father. Supposedly, the person who took the photo is your mother. You've never seen it before, right? Do you want it? Cough, I don't. That good-for-nothing dad of yours once told me that if you really get involved in this field, no matter how well or badly you develop, you can feel their feelings at the time. You can see happiness in the midst of confusion. You can see difficulties in the midst of success. However, I usually cut it in the middle and make 100 copies of the one on the right. I'll throw darts and play. You can try it. Okay. The rest of the journey was very short. The two didn't talk too much. Luo Nan received the digital photo. The pixels were fine. There were no problems placing it on the flexible e-ink screen or using the external neuron to browse with his consciousness. Luo Nan hadn't considered how to design the darts yet. He just looked at the photo over and over again in a short amount of time. He looked at the image of the fellow. It seemed that the person wasn't just a gloomy and mysterious person that made people loathe. The flat photo gave the figure an extra side profile, making it more distinct. The SUV drove to the school gate like this. But Luo Nan only woke up from a dream when Mo Haihang shouted. He raised his head. Mo Haihang knocked on the steering wheel. It's time. It won't be too late to look later. Don't be late. Luo Nan's reaction was like a thief who had been caught in the act. He closed his notebook with a bang, and the speed of his actions had already exceeded the normal range. However, he also knew that his reaction was too much, so he subconsciously covered it up. Uncle, do you still have similar photos or something? Hide. For example, my mother's photo. I've only seen a few photos of her since I was young. Most recently, I discovered. Luo Nan paused and swallowed the words tree hole back into his stomach. But this question was indeed what he wanted to ask. After hearing the identity of the photographer, he even hoped that the angle of the photo would move forward and include the scene outside the lens. Mo Haihang was taken aback for a moment before he broke into laughter. You've asked this question more than once. Huh? Luo Nan really didn't have much of an impression. When he was very young, around 6 or 7 years old, At that time, you probably just understood what life was and what death was. You cried and threw a tantrum, wanting to find your mother's photo. But in the end, you couldn't find it. Later on, you gradually stopped mentioning it. So you've forgotten? Mo Haihang was a bit surprised, but then he shook his head. There used to be a lot of photos, but there really weren't any at home. Before that bastard of a father of yours left home, he took away all of their photos, including the recorded videos. There were only a few single photos left. I heard that Qingwen didn't really like to be photographed. The majority of the photos he left behind were of him and your father. Luo Nan never thought that he would inadvertently hear this kind of information. He was a bit stupefied for a time. But a sudden quivering jolted him out of his bewildered and warm state in just half a second. 2 seconds later, the security team that had been following them all this time sent out a warning. Suspected sniper. 20 clock. Distance 2,700. Altitude 104. This was a simple warning only for Luo Nan. The corresponding tactical coordinates were transmitted to the members of the team through other channels. Luo Nan didn't need this warning. He just received a reminder, there was still an immeasurable distance between him and an ordinary, simple, and regretful life. And there was a tendency for the distance to gradually grow. Such reality made him feel helpless and resentful. But he couldn't show it on his face. He could only brew it in his heart. Luo Nan took a deep breath. Then he revealed a smile to his uncle. I remember now. So I need to go through it properly when I get home, right? Then, I'll see you tonight. He prepared to open the door and get out of the car as he spoke. Mo Haihang reminded him from within the car. Don't forget about the dinner tonight. Also, bring an umbrella when it rains. Oh. Luo Nan didn't mind being drenched by the freezing rain he had personally created, but he still obediently picked up the portable umbrella he had prepared. Soon the umbrella unfurled. At nearly the same time, a low curse came from several kilometers away under the curtain of rain. The corner of Luo Nan's lips twitched slightly. He waved his hand at his uncle in the car and walked over the wet ground toward the campus. But Mo Haihang called out to him before he even took 2 steps. Luo Nan. Luo Nan turned his head and walked back subconsciously. But Mo Haihang had him walk around the car to the driver's seat. Luo Nan walked over in a daze. He lowered his head and saw the car window roll down. He was just about to ask what was going on when he saw Mo Haihang reach out and pinch his cheeks. Ah! It must be said that the relationship between this uncle and nephew was harmonious, but their body language was always very restrained. From their perspective, this was an intimate contact that was rarely seen in over a decade. Luo Nan's face was a bit distorted as he stood outside the car window in a daze. Mo Haihang laughed as he rubbed Luo Nan's apple cheeks. Whether it's me, Mo Ya, or Mo Peng, all of us might end up throwing darts at your face one day. Rather than that, it's better to do this to your face. You understand, right? Luo Nan's face didn't hurt, but there was a problem with his fine control. In the end, he could only grin. Even though his cheeks were still being pinched, he still nodded forcefully. His uncle let go and Luo Nan turned around. He was in a sorry state a moment ago, but now he was calm. It was precisely because he understood that he had to do it. Mo Haihang's car drove away, but Luo Nan didn't look back. He walked slowly towards the campus and sent a message to the security team at the same time. Target eliminated. Malice value full. Threat level low. A whistle came from the other side. It came from Cat Eyes. Pitiful observer. That brother just took a scope. But he still has a gun box next to him. These observers were often not members of the inner world. They were only active in the gray area where the mortal world and the inner world intersected. They certainly wouldn't be the main attackers, but they could become professional criminals at any time as long as the order was given and the reward was in place. It wasn't a big deal to kill a small bug like a chicken. But if the brain of a monkey was smashed to pieces, the results should be even better. Luo Nan spun the handle of his umbrella, stirring up the curtain of rain around him. It just so happened to be the experimental stage. So let's begin. East of Xia City was over 200 nautical miles away from the original discovery site of White Bone Mountain. This was already the international waters region. A certain luxurious yacht bobbed up and down in this sea region. Light, electrical waves, and sound interweaved together in a cabin on the second floor. Number 4's foot eyes have gone blind. 'Cause of death. Basically, it can be determined to be the dripping sword. The sensors have responded, and the cranial pressure has clearly risen. Excellent. He's also confirmed that the area within a 10-second interval and a radius of 2,700 meters is in a safe zone. Plus, he sent back a clear image. Right now, number 5 is already on standby. Oh, this scum. He broke the contract and ran away. Where's number 6? Have him stand by at an observation point 5 kilometers away. Then the only suitable location is Cloud City Water Village. Are you going to have him dance a cheek-to-cheek dance with the members of the Xia City branch? Maybe the dance partner is a devil ray. In any case, I'm not the one dancing. I'm not the one paying either. Someone grumbled at this time, why are they called eyes? Are their photoreceptors bad? Because you won't be able to find 120 million similar professionals. Fine. I just feel that this will damage our luck value. Luck value is only meaningful when probability plays a role. Even if all things are probabilities, to break through the scale and enter reality. Hee. Even though they were all observers, they all had the code name eyes. But observers were also divided into ranks. Those who raised their sniper scopes to observe from a distance of several kilometers and ended up having their heads blown up were cannon fodder level observers. Observers like them, who were drinking wine and sipping coffee in the seas outside of Xia City, calmly summarizing and analyzing the information transmitted by cannon fodder, were high-level observers. If they could still get their heads blown up in the vast seas 1,000 kilometers away from Xia City, then they could only accept it. Even with the logic of the inner world, this wasn't a possibility. Naturally, they were very relaxed. After selecting a few clear images, someone suggested, how about we let that high-level SCA employee go on a mission? It's just a matter of one command. Isn't that too much? It's not like we need him to cross the Pacific Ocean. Transferring between cities will put Xia City in a very difficult situation. They're all staff planners. I get nightmares every night just thinking about this sort of temporary assignment. But the SCA isn't a fool. It seems like quite a few high-level members ran off on a vacation yesterday. How crazy would they be to dare do something like this under these circumstances? And so this topic ended. But soon, someone proposed an improvement. Comparatively speaking, I feel like it's easier to mobilize the big sister singer of the Guardians. As long as there's an assignment, it's not a problem for her to run all 24 districts in a day. The company behind her, Mingtang Culture, is a very qualified commercial company, and she just so happens to need to increase her exposure. Another person interjected, what's up with the label on this Mingtang Culture? Oh, there's the shadow of the Castlevania financial group behind it as an investor, but the Blood Flame Order has already run away. They can basically be considered a motherless child. Capital can easily cross the Pacific Ocean. But supernatural power can't. Chapter 536. Someone immediately came to a realization, you want the Blood Flame Order to take the blame? Logically speaking, it's completely plausible. They're anxious to regroup and make up for their losses in Xia City. They also want to borrow their previous connections to get closer to the water pavilion. Look, this is normal, right? But Mo Luan is already dead. What will they use to fight against two extraordinaries? Relying on the Black Widow's seduction? Isn't that a bit too old? After a burst of strange laughter, he added a suggestion: we can arrange a sufficient number of collaborators for them. This will take some time to pick and choose, but we don't need a century of lies. And there's one more point. It's more important than logic. There's more. It's the time node. Look, the Blood Flame Order's founding celebration is on December 21st. It's less than 10 days from now. The base of believers in the headquarters of Xia City has been attacked, and the elders have died. If they don't do anything, then they might have to experience the most miserable holy day of the establishment of the religion since the split of the order. Perhaps that would be the moment of complete collapse. You all know that when it comes to worship and faith, that's the best reason. Bang bang bang. The sound of knocking on the table rang out. A group of eyes slapped the table and cried out in praise, Motherf *Ker. Now that you mention it, I feel like the Blood Flame Order wouldn't stir up trouble. It's simply illogical. Soon, this group of high-level observers perfected their brilliant ideas into a plan. It was the result of their observation today, sealed, stored, and sent. After the small excitement passed, everyone returned to a state of boredom. After all, there weren't just one or two similar ideas and plans in these 2 days. It wasn't just 8 or 10 either. It was dozens or hundreds. A person in charge of organizing sighed, all of them have designs on the protectors. Aunts, uncles, older sisters, older brothers, and even aunts and aunts. It looks like a plate of sweet and sour, tasty, soft persimmons. The cabin rumbled with laughter. This group of eyes had the most right to speak on this topic. He was the first to express his stance, but he's not an extraordinary. Youngsters will always do foolish things due to impulsiveness. The Xia City branch may seem powerful, but they've already sunk into the gutter. They let a child affect their plans. Even if the child's future is bright, talent doesn't equal intelligence. I heard that the kid still doesn't agree to the safe house plan. He wants to maintain his original pace of life. Then life will teach him how to be a man. The offense is easy and delightful, and the defense is battered and exhausted. Even if it doesn't produce any direct results, it's still good to consume some of Xia City's resources. Wasn't there news that the voices of dissent within the Xia City branch were quite loud? If we can cook the frog in warm water and create conflict between them, or even turn them into enemies, it will save us a lot of trouble. In such a favorable situation, someone raised an objection. But this will slow down the pace. Very quickly, the objection was rebutted: slowing down the pace is more advantageous for us. Xia City is just a mere branch. Even if they have 2 extraordinaries and a bunch of unreliable allies, they will grind them to death sooner or later if they really wanted to go against the entire world. This was almost everyone's consensus, and it was politically correct. It was unknown which idiot broke a piece of paper. The problem is that the alliance outside might not be reliable. There was a sudden silence in the cabin, not even the sound of breathing could be heard. Fortunately, there was someone who laughed in time. I originally thought it would be a short trip. If we really were to float in the freezing rain for 10 days to half a month, my d*ck would shrink a little. When I go back to shore and find some fun, that would be a real misery. The group of observers roared with laughter. The idiot who just made a slip of the tongue laughed especially loudly. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to dispel the awkwardness between everyone. There was also someone who continued with a senseless joke: be content. The cabin is clearly so hot it's like a bird's nest puddles. Huh? The person who spoke wanted to ask, who raised the temperature so high, but then he saw a human silhouette appear on the cabin wall directly in front of him. It was like a strange relief sculpture that suddenly appeared before his eyes. Moreover, this relief sculpture was alive. In the blink of an eye, it stepped inside. It was as if the metallic wall was nothing but a laughable illusion. The temperature within the cabin rose by a large margin. It rose by more than 20 to 30 degrees in an instant. Everyone felt a scorching heat wave assault their faces. It didn't matter if it was an illusion or not, such a scene couldn't possibly be a joke. Enemy attack. At least half of the people in the cabin jumped up. Although they were observers sitting in the office, they were all above average ability users. At a time like this, the equipment all over the cabin was useless. They had to rely on themselves. Some people fell under the table at the first moment to hide, and through their own channels, they sent out warnings and distress messages. There were also full-time combat and security personnel on the ship, but until now, they hadn't done a good job of security. No matter who was in the cabin, there was an unsolvable doubt in their hearts. Who was the attacker? How did he board the ship? After a short half a second, all doubts became meaningless. The first person to discover it, and also the person who jumped the earliest, suddenly withered. His facial features and 7 orifices spurted out blood-red flames, and his exposed skin wrinkled, as if all the water had been sucked out in an instant, and without a doubt, all the vitality had been sucked out. Blood flames. Amidst the scream, another person was hit by the blood flames and fell to the ground with a scream. Outside the cabin, the footsteps and shouts of the security personnel were already concentrated. Even before the footsteps, the cabin door rumbled. The strongest person on the ship, the B-class expert Su-Hu, had already broken through the door, wanting to catch the attacker unprepared. However, at this time, the attacker's human figure once again turned into nothingness. His originally substantial body turned into a strange smoke that surged like fog, and countless sparks burst out from it. All the people in the cabin were hit by the rain and dew, and no one could avoid it. Suffocating fog, shattering fire. F***ck me. Su-Hu couldn't help but curse. At the same time, he dashed out of the cabin door at an even faster speed, knocking into the security personnel behind him and sending them flying. He was actually saving someone. Almost at the instant he retreated, the cabin exploded with a rumble. Flames with a bewitching and thick blood color chased after his figure, spurting out from the cabin door and forming a ferocious flame tongue. The impact even blasted through the corridor, the cabin walls, and a small part of the ship's hull, flickering in the freezing rain on the sea surface. The security personnel at the door were swaying left and right. In the end, only 2 or 3 unlucky people were burned to charcoal. This was already the best result. As for the cabin where the high-ranking observers were, it was completely filled with the blood flames, and miserable screams rang out incessantly. There wasn't a single struggle of life inside, only the despairing wails of life as it turned to ash. Just as they expected, they indeed didn't encounter the dripping sword domain. However, outside of their logic and imagination, there was a blood flame massacre that came straight to their door. As the highest person in charge of the security team, the B-class expert Su-Hu's face was ashen, and he didn't say a word. His subordinates were still trying to extinguish the fire. He didn't stop them, but he knew that this was a meaningless action. Blood seizes the soul, flames destroys the body. Under such a vicious blood flame, even if the eyes were forcibly dragged out of the fire, there was no hope of survival. Reality proved his judgment. By the time the security personnel extinguished the flames, 80 to 90% of the people in the fire were dead. Those who were temporarily hanging on to life had large areas of burns. The fire poison had invaded their internal organs, and most of their bodies were cooked. It was better to die. As for the assailants, they had long since flown away into the distance. Their whereabouts were unknown. Su-Hu stepped into the fire, and he nearly stepped on a certain eye, on the verge of death. This high-ranking observer was nearly burnt to the floor. He unconsciously moaned. Su-Hu's hearing was exceptional, so he could hear it clearly. The blood flame order has gone mad. The spider has gone mad. No matter how strong the winds of the seas outside of Xia City were, it was impossible to blow the moans and the smell of burnt flesh 1,000 kilometers away onto dry land. There was no need to even mention the distant region that was separated by a metropolis. 150 kilometers west of the satellite city of Xia City, Anzhong, was an undulating hilly region. It was also the complete scope of the wilderness. And at the northeastern edge of the hilly region, there was a cave building that was carved into the inside of the hill. It was known as the Picnic Inn. The architectural style of the Picnic Inn was extremely vagrant. It was said that several decades ago, it was the settlement area of a vagrant tribe. But now, its main function was to provide food, lodging, and supplies. It belonged to the explorers, wilderness vagrants, and other complex groups of people. It was also one of the most legal civilian facilities in the wilderness. Johnny was the seventh owner of the Picnic Inn. The reason why he bought this place was obviously because it could make money, a lot of money. But there was another secondary reason. The Picnic Inn was located behind the District 27 infrasonic array of Sia City. It was located behind the permanent fortifications, and it could give customers a stronger sense of security. But ever since the appearance of the humanoid infrasonic array in Sia City, several similar permanent fortifications surrounding Sia City had dropped in importance. The Picnic Inn also became the target of ridicule for the tourists. Luckily, Johnny didn't count on it to make a living. Instead, he really liked the popularity of this topic, the large amounts of information, and the explosive increase in income. Ever since the night of December 8th, Sia City entered into a state of emergency. The number of people staying in the Picnic Inn and the number of customers increased explosively. 99% of the current guests came for the Miss 2000th and the humanoid infrasonic array. And the Sia City branch's refusal order had a bit of effect. This group of losers who wanted to take advantage of the situation were like a group of red-eyed mice. They were drooling over the fragrant bait, but they didn't dare to step into the iron cage filled with killing intent. They could only wander around the outskirts of Sia City. During these 2 days, there were a few people or teams that accepted employment to infiltrate Sia City for an adventure. There were also some people or teams that were still looking for opportunities. Johnny loved this kind of atmosphere to death. Just the information on student Luo's relatives brought him millions of dollars in income. The corresponding risks were not worth mentioning. Who made him a member of the Sia City branch? Johnny sat in the corner of the second floor of the cave. He was calculating how to upgrade his information. Perhaps he could participate in student Luo's beginner class. If student Luo was able to live until the 14th, then many people would be interested in his ability. When the time came, he would add, shocking. So this is the source of Luo Nan's ability, and so on. Just by posting it on the internet, he could make a killing. But what should he do during this period of time? Chapter 537. Johnny was still immersed in the atmosphere of his money-making plan. He did not react for a moment. Which bays? The lobby manager pursed his lips. The one from the Order of Justice. What kind of situation is this? He's still acting like a lord here. Do you really think this is still 2 months ago? Ever since the incident at Frost River Reality, the Order of Justice had lost 2 priests, Enwang and Enchanting. Their core combat force, the Ablatum Knights, were almost completely wiped out. Their follow-up reinforcements had yet to arrive. This branch of the Order of Justice had sunk into its weakest period. First Ablatum Zhengxiao, who was currently in charge, had never been a powerful character. Faced with this complicated situation, his first order was to withdraw and wait for further orders. He had even disposed of a number of properties. The Wild Inn that Johnny had purchased contained a portion of the Order of Justice's shares. Now that they had all been withdrawn, the lobby manager's mood was as expected. You don't even have a share, so why are you still pretending to be a big-tailed wolf? Johnny originally wanted to chat with the lobby manager about the art of management, but his sharp eyes, honed from years of chaos, discovered that one of his most important sources of information had entered the tavern. Johnny waved his hand. So what if he eats and drinks? A B-rank powerhouse should have this kind of treatment. The lobby manager sneered. He's an Ablatum Knight. Without a priest behind him, how can he be considered a B-rank? That's still 100 times better than a sissy like you who sells butts. Johnny sneered in his heart, but in the end, he just said, "All right, let him drink as he pleases for now. If he really gets drunk, he'll spit out one or two of the Order of Justice's core secrets and change hands. He can even earn back a wine cellar." He dismissed the lobby manager with just a few words, telling this fake man, who was pinching his thumb and middle finger, to scram. Johnny sighed with emotion at the demeanor and knowledge that a professional manager should have. He swept his eyes over the bar on the first floor, and his eyelids twitched. Blood energy. That was a super drink that could only be purchased with honor points and other channels from the inner world. But not only did Baze gulp it down like a whale, he even used it as a topping. At this moment, even Johnny was suspicious. Could it be that the bastard knew that his shares had been withdrawn, so he came here to play the fool? But as the boss, since he had already spoken, he could only brace himself and persevere. At this time, the source of information had already arrived on the second floor. He waved at the person. "Hey, black box. F***CKU, it's a metal box. It's just a name, there's no difference. However, if you can take out something better, I can even call you treasure." Pretending to be intimate, they exchanged a few vulgarities and bumped fists. The two of them sat on opposite sides of the table and entered into transaction mode. Unlike Johnny, who was an outer member of the society, Iron Box was a member of the Xia City branch's action team. He was a core force that the society put more effort into nurturing. Therefore, they had a natural advantage in obtaining information. In the past, the Xia City branch was in a state of leaking on all sides. People like Metal Box had at least opened a window. Because of this, when faced with the gradual tightening of internal discipline, this brother was also full of complaints. "We really can't F***King survive now. We're purely blast walls, facing the nuclear explosion head-on, and then dying a worthless death. I must leave this place as soon as possible. That's why I'm in need of money and travel expenses." Johnny chuckled. "For the sake of our many years of cooperation, I'm willing to raise more money for you. But for the final project, we have to find a highlight or explosive point. F***CKU, maybe I should put some juicy meatballs in your mouth. Because of your terrible attitude, the prices of goods in Xia City have increased by a notch." Both sides used intimate and ferocious attitudes to carry out a close exchange. 15 minutes later, they finally reached an agreement with great difficulty. Iron Box once again raised his travel expenses, and Johnny obtained relevant information about a certain orphanage as well as the predetermined plans of the Xia City branch's action team for the next few days. Iron Box didn't care if the price was satisfactory or not. He walked down with a dark face as per usual. Johnny wouldn't tell him that this was the origin of the black box. "What? You're talking about black box operations?" At their level, they weren't worthy. But soon, Johnny lost the mood to tease Iron Box. In these 15 minutes, Baze ruined at least 2 points worth of good wine in front of the bar on the first floor of the cave. He smoothly knocked away half of Johnny's earnings, and he even continued to do so. This time, not only Johnny's eyelids twitched, even his eyebrows and apple cheeks were twitching. But he really didn't have the guts to clash with this famous muscleman of Xia City. Yes, this was the most fundamental reason. What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve Johnny. He left his seat with a taut face and returned to his private room in the next floor of the cave. There was a time limit for the information. He had to make them pay as soon as possible. But not long after he returned to his room, the lobby manager made a phone call before he could even log into the dark web. Actually, there was no need. The cave Johnny resided in was already shaking. He only heard a worthless report. Baze stopped Iron Box and splashed him in the face. Then they started fighting. F***CK this black dog. Johnny finally couldn't help but curse. The problem was that it was meaningless. The worst thing was that the situation in the first floor of the cave quickly went out of control. For the first 30 seconds, the sissy could still cry to him about the loss of assets and casualties. But after a deafening explosion, there was no more sound from the other side. Johnny immediately made a call to the security captain of the Wild Inn. But the news he obtained made his blood boil and his vision darken. The security team he paid millions of dollars in salary every month was practically all dead. As for the two leading figures he invited to watch the scene, they didn't even have the time to exchange blows with the Ablatum Knight blessed by the priestess before they were drowned in the indescribably excited crowd of guests and drinkers. Right now, there was already a chaotic battle downstairs. Most of the people came for one purpose, but there were too many monks and not enough gruel. What 2,000 or 16 billion? They never said that they could split it evenly. Perhaps many people had the mentality of, the big shots eat the meat, and we drink the soup, but wouldn't it be better if there were fewer people drinking the soup? Hidden competition and suppression were always present, and the corresponding hostility and hatred were also accumulating layer by layer. With a big target, these, gunpowder, could still be controlled. They were temporarily stacked in everyone's hearts, but the premise was that they did not go off by accident. Johnny's scalp was about to explode. If the chaos continued, the accumulated gunpowder would completely explode. Even if this Wild Inn could still be preserved, it would soon welcome its 8th boss. Every time this happened, the previous boss would always end up in a bad situation. He began to make frantic calls to various investors, as well as to the real big shots in the vicinity. The military had shares here, and they would occasionally receive some filial piety. Not to mention anything else, as long as they sent a small team, even if it was just for show. With a muffled bang, the floor clearly shook, and Johnny almost bounced up. He turned his head in shock and saw that the floor, which was compacted with red earth and reinforced with steel bars, had been forcibly pierced through. Half of the body of the metal box, who had just completed the transaction with Johnny, drilled out of the hole. His head was flat and deformed, and it looked like his spine was already broken. One of his eyeballs had exploded out of his eye socket, and the remaining eye still had a dark red bloody hole. The metal box blankly looked forward, meeting Johnny's gaze head-on. The hair on Johnny's thighs stood on end when he faced this scene. Then right after, the door with 3 layers of protection was kicked open. Baze, who was still clutching a bottle of blood energy, grinned as he staggered through the door. Soon, his boot landed, and half of the metal box's body fell down. A muffled sound rang out, and then there was no more sound. Baze, you're crazy. At this moment, Johnny's voice was so sharp that it surpassed that of his lobby manager. He had completely forgotten what was the correct attitude. He could only rely on his instincts to shout, "I'm a member of the Sia City branch." He only remembered that a member had been kicked down the stairs when he spoke to this point. His voice came to an abrupt halt. Baze grinned and shook the bottle at Johnny. "This wine is pretty good." The sound of the bottle shattering rang out at the same time as the sound of ribs and flesh exploding. The remains of the bottle smashed through Johnny's chest and acted like a nail, nailing him to the wall. Blood and internal organ fragments sprayed out, and soon they dyed a large portion of the floor red. They even flowed down the hole that the metal box had smashed through. Johnny's eyes were wide open, and his mouth was wide open. His remaining breath and life force mixed with his blood surged out from within. Baze's savage smile dissipated from his dilated pupils. Baze slightly leaned his body to the side, and he piously knelt down on one knee. He placed one hand on the ground, and the other on his chest. "All glory to my Lord." The scenery before Johnny's eyes blurred, and his dazed consciousness seemed to enter another space. He saw layers upon layers of grids. They were like the interweaving and spreading spider webs of a damp jungle. They stuck to every nook and cranny of the void. Everything trembled on the spider web, including his life force and consciousness that had yet to dissipate. This strange structure was dyed with a dark red color of blood. His soul seemed to be hooked by a strand of spider silk, moving up the layers of the spider web. But how deep and boundless was this web? He couldn't see the end at all. He could only vaguely see the shadow of a blood-red sun in the distant deep space. There were many limbs branching out from its edges, twisting and moving. It was like a malevolent demonic spider. It illuminated everything, controlled everything, and destroyed everything. Johnny's train of thought came to an end here. Fortunately for him, the Wilden managed by the seventh boss was able to endure the destructive blow in the end. Even though a portion of the structure had collapsed, the main body still existed. It was just that moving the corpses outside really took quite a bit of effort. News and blood from the sea and inland were transmitted back to Xia City through all sorts of channels. It was already noon by the time it was widely disseminated. Luo Nan had just finished school. He returned to Gear with Shui Lei and ate lunch with Rue Wen and his own security team. The opportunity to freely use the building of Gear was decreasing with each passing moment. He treasured this opportunity exceptionally. However, someone soon interrupted the meal process. Before, I only knew that you were a third-generation researcher. Yeah, you're the third generation of a family of researchers. But could it be that you're also a hidden aristocrat of a secret order? Have the Blood Flame Order and the Order of Justice already crawled beneath your feet? Zhang Yingying's mouth expressed her emotions without restraint, and Luo Nan didn't need to do anything. He just had a wooden expression, and this was more than enough. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.